Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2017 North American Challenger Series Summer Split Playoffs. I'm Optimus Tom Searfoss, and making his Wednesday Challenger debut is Mark Zimmerman.
That's not my debut. I've done Wednesday before.
This
split, sure. Okay,
yeah,
fine.
okay.
Yeah, this split.
I'm all thrown off of my days right now. But as we leave the regular season in the rearview mirror and move ahead into the postseason, let's take a look who made it to the semifinals. On the top side of the bracket, we have first seed eUnited facing off against fourth place finishers, Big Gods Jackals.
And below them, we have second and third place teams, Gold Coin United and Tempo Storm, going head-to-head tomorrow night.
And as the stakes increase for the postseason, as do the number of games we will play, our best-of-3 format will extend into a best-of-5 series for all of the remaining matches.
And I think that's something I personally enjoy a lot because you give teams an extra game to figure out exactly what's going right or wrong. So if you lose the first game, you can potentially say, no, I think that was a good draft. Let's go back to that strategy. And then if it doesn't work then you can adapt. And it just gives you more room to play with and rewards the better team who can adapt mid-series.
Yeah, and that adaptation will be key because that's not the only change teams will be dealing with here. We're also moving to patch 7.14 for the duration of the Challenger Series playoffs.
Oh boy, I hope you guys like lethality. You're going to be seeing a lot of these two items tonight. Obviously, the Duskblade was the one that a lot of people were talking about. It did receive a hot fix that dropped some of the passive proc damage. It was around 30 by level 9, so that's about when a lot of people think they're getting this item, which isn't a huge nerf, but a small one, so you'll still see it a little bit, but hopefully it's not completely overpowered. Ghostblade and all the other lethality items all benefited from the fact that it now scales off your level as opposed to your opponent's level. And then another big change for itemization, of course, was the Bramble Vest. It's kind of like a mini Thornmail, but it has that kind of benefit of having the Grievous Wounds application, so you can cut down on people's lifesteal.
Yep, and we saw the build path change for the Duskblade as well, so now we'll have to figure out which one they're going to be going between the Ghostblade and the Duskblade. But the difficulties and the adaptations of playing a new patch are going to be key here for these teams as they move into the semifinals.
I mean, that's the big thing, is because you heard kind of Doublelift talk about it during one of his interviews after the LCS when he was saying that it kind of brings everyone back down. So TSM was looking forward to it because they felt like they were a little bit behind teams. Then everyone has to relearn the new patch. That applies here, especially because if one of the lower seeded teams, like let's say Big Gods Jackals, figures out a really important strategy, then they have a little bit of a leg up here, and it might give them an opportunity to set an upset.
Yeah, we have a lot of different things coming in 7-14, but now let's get into tonight's marquee event. It's going to be a rematch of the Spring Split semifinals and last week's series too. It's eUnited taking on Big Gods Jackals. And despite a good start in game number 2 last week, Big Gods, they're just unable to walk away with a win, and eUnited wound up taking that series 2-0.
Yeah, and based off how these two teams were performing throughout the split, I think that was pretty expected. From a stats perspective, eUnited are better than Big Gods Jackals in pretty much every single lane. You see that a lot of these guys are actually, the leader of their position in the NACS with these kind of things, and that's how it is mostly between eUnited and Gold Coin United to lead most statistical categories. So it's obviously going to be an uphill battle a little bit here for the side of Big Gods Jackals.
There's nothing more than I like than proving things through numbers. And while eUnited's matches looked rougher than usual last week, losing to both Gold Coin United and then almost dropping a game to Big Gods Jackals. Not quite. We did hear from Definitely in the post-game interview that the team didn't have the best practice coming into the week because Dandy and GBM were busy working on their visas.
Yeah, and if eUnited play more like they did the first 4 weeks of Challenger, then they should look very strong over the course of the series.
Yeah, but that means, of course, it's going to be an uphill battle for Big Gods Jackals, who might have had their best opportunity to beat eUnited last week, but even though Fabi was fed, they still fell short.
Yeah, they had a good chance to win game 2 of that series, but they weren't quite able to close it out. They did a good job of capitalizing on eUnited's misplays, like this dive that came in that was a little poorly executed. And it's stuff like this that, it's great if you can take these and kind of turn them around, but if they have any chance of winning this series, they need to be able to consistently create their own advantages. And on top of that, they're going to be starting RF Legendary, so, no big TP plays coming in by Chris like what happened in this example. They're going to have to use him, who hasn't even played a single game this split so far.
Yeah, so not only do they have patch adaptations, not only are they going to have to adapt in a short amount of time to see if they can come back against eUnited, who they fell to last week, but now they have a new top laner to do it too. So why don't we just jump into the starting lineup for both teams to get you guys familiar with everybody involved. On the blue side for game 1, it's eUnited. In the top lane is FLICKR, jungle is Dandy, mid lane GBM, with the bot lane of Deathly and his support Zazel.
And on the red side, it's Big Gods Jackals. Like we said, top lane RF Legendary subbing in. Jungle is Sir T, mid lane Peckinwolf, bot lane Fabi, supported by Bayano.
And like you mentioned, Chris came into Big Gods Jackals last split of Challenger, didn't wind up playing in any of the playoff games. It was RF Legendary they went with. Then coming into the summer split, they brought in Chris. They brought in Sir T into the jungle. They took out Wiggly. Now they have RF Legendary coming back in during the playoffs. And last year, they played against eUnited in this exact same spot, and they got 0-3 swept.
And that's kind of the thing is that RF Legendary did struggle a little bit in spring last season, so it's kind of a surprise to see him come back in right now at the last possible moment. But who knows exactly why they're doing the substitution? Because like we said, it is a new patch. Maybe RF Legendary is able to use some of its top lane things because Jace is going to be one of like those picks that I think a lot of people are looking at as potentially being one of the strongest champions on this patch, and maybe RF Legendary has a better Jace or something like that. So I can understand the world where you want to use RF Legendary, even though it's seemingly out of the blue.
Yeah, he used to be kind of known as the top lane Nidalee one trick. He has been known to play a decent amount of Jace. The Rumble was also something that came into play, and if this is going to be something of the re-emerging top laners, Rumble may wind up coming up in priority. He's seen some changes in the previous patch. He might not be necessarily as strong, but as we hop into picks and bans for game number 1, we'll see what exactly Big Gods Jackals and both eUnited are going to be doing on 7-14.
Right, I mean, 7-14, we highlighted a bunch of the item changes, but that's not all there was. There were a ton of champion changes. Not a ton of top-tier picks getting hit that hard. I mean, Caitlyn received some super minor nerfs and stuff like that, but then there were a lot of big changes on some other champions. Cho'Gath and Singed receiving huge updates in their passives and actual spells, respectively, so gonna have to keep our eye out for exactly what's gonna be picked here.
Yeah, and of course the rise of the tank junglers has kind of been happening in 7-13, and with some buffs to, like you mentioned, Cho'Gath, and we've seen more Sejuani being played recently as well. The new Thornmail remake makes it very, very key. So when lethality rises and the Thornmail rises, we'll see which one prevails. But so far, the bans seem pretty standard here. Galio, Elise, Zac being banned away. eUnited has also decided to ban away the Corki from Peek and Woof. It's something he's historically been very, very good at playing. But the Vladimir ban coming in from Big Gods Jackals too, specifically targeted at GVM.
A little surprising to see that one in the first rotation of bans. You think they might go for something else. Also, the Rek'Sai ban. So we see a lot of focus down on them. And then the first pick, Cho'Gath. A lot of people have been tweeting, but I saw some tweets out of Lorlo on Team Liquid saying that, you know, please stop banning it. Let me just try to play Cho'Gath top. So what the change was the E went from a toggle ability that does just AoE on all your auto attacks to an empowered ability that you have to activate and then make sure your next 3 auto attacks deal now some bonus health, maximum health damage, as well as applying a slow on them. So he's a lot stronger. You might see him in the jungle or the top lane. I've heard of both. And then the other one that we talked about potentially being strong on this patch, Jace, also locked in right away from Big Gods Jackals.
Yeah, and no surprise with RF Legendary being subbed in, the Jace priority absolutely rises. We did see Chris playing a decent amount of that throughout the Challenger split as well. But this one will be taken most likely by Big Gods Jackals top lane. We'll have to see as the rest of the pick and ban phase kind of goes through. But also Caitlyn being covered now and will be locked in by Big Gods Jackals. Despite her seeing a lot of kind of priority nerfs and lowering and banning and everything, she's still first rotation priority here for Big Gods.
Yeah, I mean, the nerf was so minor. It's a 2% attack speed per level nerf, I believe it was. So overall, pretty minor nerf. And I think it's the kind of thing where you can still take her early on. She still has that pushing power. Then in the late game, she has the massive zone control with the traps and the headshots and all that comes with her. So a great pickup here. And it was a little surprising to see Big Gods Jackals take are not banned on red side. That's something you used to see, but I think maybe they kind of predicted this higher priority on something like the Cho'Gath and some of these other new champions, and they expected it to fall through onto red side. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the side of eUnited are going to be picking up some interesting picks for themselves. Kha'Zix now with the lethality back into his favor, can emerge out of the jungle. You know, he's not necessarily the tanky guy that we are expecting to see. However, he was a priority pick previously. We're going to see him again. And then the Alistar coming in as a support option here for Zeyzal. That's also something that was touched very minorly kind of in 7-14. The damage reduction on his ultimate was kind of changed around a little bit, and he's seen a little bit more priority breaking through in the bot lane along the side of Braum, Tahm Kench, and the other tank support.
It is surprising to see it blind, though, especially you only see the Caitlyn, really, and until you secure a good AD carry matchup, who knows if the Alistar is going to work out for them. Big Gods takes the Gragas, one of the strongest tank junglers on the patch, which you're probably going to want if the Jace is going topside, because you won't get any beef up there. But what this is scary is that Big Gods Jackals now bans out the Kalista intelligently, not wanting to give up the Alistar Kalista, which was such a formidable level 6 all-in previously, so that's out. And now if you're eUnited, it's what AD carry you're going to be able to go with. Some of the lethality builders do have decent matchups into Caitlyn, though I would never say that they win the matchup. And then you already have one of the weaker supports in lane with the Alistar.
Yeah, well, we did wind up seeing Jhin rise in priority recently. He was one of those kind of lethality go-tos. The Varus has kind of hovered kind of as one of the go-to pickups in the bot lane meta for a while. So we'll see if that one winds up getting locked in here. But the side of eUnited have kind of banned out a little bit of both from the remaining champion pool. They banned away the Ahri, which is not necessarily a high priority pickup specifically for Peek and Woof, but they've also banned away the Bard coming out from Bayana, which has been a big playmaking champion out of a big playmaking player for Big Gods Jackals.
And there's still a fair amount of playmaking supports up, though. You might see a Thresh, something like that has not been picked yet. It looks like they are going to go with the Braum instead, wanting to get a little bit more of a front line in, as well as already kind of having the lane under control. Braum's a fine laner in his own right, especially into Alistar, but he provides a lot of utility in the late game as well. So overall, it looks like Big Gods Jackals do have a lot of winning lanes already secured. And then they are going to, save their last pick for mid, assuming that they get a counter pick there. They could end up with 3 winning lanes potentially.
Yeah, I mean, things like Syndra are still on the table, who are very high, massive damage AP threats out of the mid lane, since they do have a lot of AD-centric on their team with the Jace in the top lane. But they also have a lot of long-range poke potential, which is something that a mid laner like Peek and Move would slot into extremely well. So we'll see what they wind up riding out their composition with. Meanwhile, on eUnited side, definitely going for a little bit more of the tried-and-true bot lane pick. Ashe has been kind of one of the go-to initiators from that bottom lane ADC marksman role, and one of the staples for definitely too. Very popular pick into the Caitlyn, a very good lane pick.
That's what I was going to say. It's kind of his bread and butter champion down there. He is very accurate with his ultimate, a fine laner, able to get a lot of leads for himself. And so you see this team comp of eUnited, a little bit of a 4-1 setup. Obviously, Cho'Gath is not a great split pusher, so he'll probably group up a little bit more with the team. The LeBlanc is going to go probably split into a side lane and try and make stuff happen. And then you have definitely potentially initiating fights with the ultimate, and Kha'Zix's kind of running around trying to hope there's a lot of chaos. You can find some pickoffs.
Yeah, so eUnited maybe trying to play to the fact that what we saw on the full screen graphic earlier, that they do have very strong individual players and trying to prey upon more chaotic kind of fights. As Big Gods Jackals will lock in that Syndra for Peek and Move in the mid lane, they definitely kind of have more of a cohesive unit. They have a very strong front line, they have high damage in the back line, and as you mentioned, very powerful winning lane matchups.
Yeah, once again, Big Gods Jackals can also go for that 4-1 split with that Jace, but both teams, they went with a couple new things on the patch, like we were saying. We got to see the Jace lock in early, as well as the Cho'Gath. Obviously, that is the matchup I am most excited for, given that these are 2 new champions a little bit with all the changes that came in. So we'll definitely have to keep our eye up there. And then it's going to be about which of those 2 solo laners gets further ahead of the other one. If the Jace is snowballing, maybe the LeBlanc has a harder time matching him. And the same thing's true in reverse. If the LeBlanc can get going, then you might see Jace have a hard time in the side lane.
And it's been a very long time since we've seen a Cho'Gath on Summoner's Rift to begin with, let alone one into a Jace matchup here, as we are going to be loading into game number 1 here of our North American Challenger Series Summer Semifinals. eUnited, the number 1 seed, coming into this matchup against Big Gods Jackals on the red side, who are the number 4 seed. If you think you're having deja vu, no, we're not playing a VOD from last week. These 2 teams did match up just last week. eUnited took the 2-0 victory. Big Gods Jackals, though, they kind of stuck to their tried and true. eUnited have a little bit of room for flexibility here with some of the new picks, some of the new stuff on 7-14, and the fact they do come in here as heavy favorites.
It is kind of funny that they played last week and you're thinking, all right, maybe I'm getting some data on my opponent, knowing what they prioritize and things like that, but then you go into the week with a completely new patch, you lose a lot of that kind of information you might have been able to scout out from that series that didn't matter a ton in the last week of the regular season. Obviously, eUnited need to win it to be able to secure that first round or first place seed in the playoffs, but didn't need to show that much. And with a new patch, obviously you're going to be able to surprise your opponents.
Yeah, Big Gods Jackals have a little bit of surprise in their own right. The fact that they've subbed in RF Legendary, the fact that they were able to prioritize the Jace pick over pretty much anything else because they have RF in the top side of the map. And as you mentioned before, he was known a little bit as like a Nidalee one-trick player. Then he started picking up the Rumble and the Jace. One of the things that we do know that RF was lacking last time we saw him in the Challenger Series was that teleport play. So if they do get into a 4-1 split push scenario, it's really going to be on what has RF learned from his time kind of on the, riding the bench for Big Gods Jackals, and how he's going to apply it.
So a little different start here out of eUnited, actually giving Dandy the leash on blue buff. Usually you see people start around mid. LeBlanc not very good for giving a leash on the bot side, and I guess eUnited's bot lane didn't want to give up the leash either or something, so they decided to start on the top side with Dandy. Obviously, Kha'Zix is a champion that can spam ability, sometimes runs low if you are casting your spells all the time, so I can kind of understand a blue buff start here. The question is, does RF Legendary know that? Because if you know the Kha'Zix is clearing down to the bot side as Jace, you can start playing super aggressive early on. That's kind of what he's already doing.
Yeah, we see RF utilizing a bit of the range advantage over LICKRish's very tiny Cho'Gath, although we will potentially get to see a very large Cho'Gath in the late game, because haven't seen competitive play on him since that changes.
Right, I mean, that's definitely something worth pointing out now that his ultimate can stack infinitely with champions eaten. So he can get pretty big up on the top side, and that's something to keep your eye on as we go later in the game. Like you said, I don't think we've seen a Cho'Gath since that has come through in competitive play.
Don't think so. It'll be very interesting to cast on the play-by-play side. If there's a giant Cho'Gath taking up half of my screen, so you might have to bear with me on that one.
A little bit of a learning curve for everyone involved here.
Well, it looks like now that Dandy, utilizing that blue buff start, is going to be invading on the bottom side here. Sir T has just gotten the blue buff for himself. Already used the smite to heal off of the wolves. Dandy's going to get leapt on there. Sir T has to flash away, but a flash follow from Dandy. First blood secured for Kha'Zix.
Excellent coordination there on the side of eUnited, able to use the Ashe to potentially scout out the Gragas positioning and his health, knowing that it's pretty low. Now, Fabi caught a little out of position. Zay's going to chunk him out, but really smart play overall. Dandy's going to have to give himself the execute here, not able to get out after that kill, but something you're pretty happy with. Get this Kha'Zix snowballing. Don't give the enemy team anything to work with off of it. No double buffs going over to a lane or anything bad. And here you see Dandy knows he's on these wolves. They had already caught vision of him, and he's going to be able to get this kill. Sir T trying to wait for the last possible moment to get this flash. Maybe could have flashed a little bit earlier instead of giving Dandy time for the cooldown and sneaking an auto or two more. If he flashed that wall right away, I doubt Dandy follows. Who knows exactly, because then Dandy just gets a free flash out and can continue invading aggressively. A little bit of a lose-lose situation there.
Yeah, so Dandy already getting things going for eUnited in the early game here. And last week, it was kind of a matchup of eUnited taking early game leads and just riding them out into victory. It was really big Gods Jackals who were trying to capitalize on any sort of mistakes eUnited were going to make. Game number 1, there weren't very many mistakes from eUnited. Game number 2, however, is where big Gods Jackals was able to come back into the game, kind of get themselves out to an advantage, but it was really on Fabi in the bottom lane, using that Tristana, getting into the later stages of the game. But Zeyzal on a pick champion, specifically the Morgana, was the reason that eUnited was able to come back.
And here's Dandy trying to live in Sir T's jungle. They have some deep wards down there early on. They spot him coming. Dandy sits, cuts him off from his Raptor camp, chunks him out a little bit. This is that kind of 4:30 time you hear a lot of people talking about, where you want to get on top of their Raptor camps right as they spawn, because you can know the enemy team started there. Dandy wins the smite fight, is able to hit 4 off this camp. Some very aggressive and effective counter jungling out of the import player early on.
Yeah, and we saw Dandy at 5 CS when he invaded Sir T for first blood early on, got executed and just immediately upgraded to that tracker's knife, went into the jungle, put the wards down, and spotted out Sir T again. Wasn't afraid to get up close and personal, despite a small level experience advantage for at least a little bit of time for Sir T, because he has that pressure from GBM in the mid lane. We see Peek and Move being forced under tower here by GBM on this LeBlanc, continuously poking him down, going in and getting him low, and Dandy might be looking for a little bit of a fancy tower dive. The minion wave's pushed up. We'll have to see who wants it going in first. Dandy's going to leap in, gets the flash out of Peek and Move GBM. Is he going to flash after? He will,
Oh,
but
it's a minion.
He changed the minion, and Peek and Move's going to be able to... Oh, he goes back in! GBM's going to pick up a kill anyway. It's gifted over to him.
Peek and Wolf not quite tracking the cooldowns of the enemy mid laner. The fact that GBM went for the E instead of the W right away to proc the passive that was on the Syndra maybe made him think that the W was going to be on cooldown for a little bit longer. The E hits the minion. Peek and Wolf thinks he's safe. He starts walking back forwards and ends up getting W'd right on top of with the auto attack finishing off.
Yeah, the same exact time we panned down the bomb, saw Zeyzal getting chunked down a little bit. This is Peek and Move try. Looked like he got away, but then kind of turns back around.
Yeah, so you see him go for the flash E instead of the flash W, which I think kind of telegraphed to Peek and Wolf that he would have been fine, but he walks back forward, he thinks he's safe, takes the W back in, gets the Q auto attack off, and that's all she wrote.
So another kill going on to the side of eUnited, and very, very strong mid lane champion as well from GBM. We haven't necessarily seen him pick up LeBlanc all too often. I mean, LeBlanc had kind of been banned away a lot. And actually, we're going to wind up seeing a dive going down to RF Legendary. Has to try to flash away, but Dandy continuing to get things done. And
whoa!
Looks like there was a pause in the game, so we're going to have to cut out of the action right there. Don't know if RF Legendary lives or not. Yeah.
Gotta give some credit to Dandy, though, during this pause, to be surprised at how aggressive he's being early on. He traded his flash in that initial kill that he got. And usually what some people do when they lose that flash is they go, all right, well, I got to start playing a little safer, because if I get caught out during an invade, I might just get collapsed on and killed. But Dandy not letting up at all, keeps his foot firmly on the pedal to keep going forward, and he's already made one dive around the mid lane, and looks like he might turn another one on the top side right now.
Yeah, well, we mentioned that GBM kind of just putting the pressure on Peek and Move in the mid lane, and saying that the GBM hasn't played a lot of LeBlanc. He's, it's kind of been a priority ban on the North American side of things. We went to Rift Rivals, just saw EU letting it through, and they kind of paid the price for that. They lost the entire event, so there was that. But the LeBlanc too has not really been a GBM GBM style of champion. We're used to seeing like Phoenix and Fly play like the roaming champion once they got these lane advantages, but GBM was kind of known as like a safe farmer, not necessarily known for moving around the map on that champion.
Well, especially, you know, even forgetting laning phase, out of lane, the fact that it's a more of a 1-3-1 style champion is something that I don't think we associate with GBM at all. He's known for being a great team fighter, like you said, farm up early on, but then when you get into the late game, his role for the most part when he's playing the Vladimir and things like that is go dive onto the back line and take those 5v5 situations. On the LeBlanc pick, completely different. Sure, you still kind of dive in, but you have to play those very, very carefully. You can't really just dive through a front line quite like a Vladimir can. And then you also should be spending the vast majority of your time just in a side lane by yourself.
Right, and we saw him when he was playing the Talia, something we also hadn't seen him play a lot when he was in that split push scenario, not necessarily in kind of his positioning and team fight kind of, you know, GBM meta style. He was struggling to find pickoffs utilizing that Weaver's Wall. He was kind of struggling in sort of these split push scenarios where he didn't necessarily understand how strong he was in that 1v1 situation. And that was, you know, against big Gods Jackals just last week.
Right, and you know, Talia as a split pusher is not the LeBlanc type even, where LeBlanc's going in and looking for kills and really chunking people out, whereas Talia kind of just wants to shove you in and then go roam around a lot more and try and use, like you said, that Weaver's Wall to cut people off, cut them off from objectives, whatever it is. And while he was struggling in that style, maybe the LeBlanc is a little bit more a style because it, you know, GBM, we always talk about the laning phase being kind of a, you know, slow for him. But then once he gets out of laning phase, he gets really, really bloodthirsty. He goes crazy on those backlines. That's why he drew a Vladimir ban in the first rotation, because that champion is just so scary for them. So I can understand maybe LeBlanc does play to that a little bit better than Talia.
Yeah, well, speaking of just the bloodthirst coming out from eUnited in this early game, we've already praised Dandy kind of for what he's been able to do on the Kha'Zix so far. But more importantly, we focused down on his opponent, specifically in Sir T for first blood. Then he wound up diving mid lane. Now he's focusing down on RF Legendary on the top side of the map. Big Gods Jackals in their series against eUnited last week, their saving grace was Fabi on the bottom side of the map, but definitely in Zays were kind of able to keep their, you know, keep them even if not slightly ahead throughout the laning phase. And Dandy on this Kha'Zix pick now seems to be unlocked to really get those solo lanes across the map snowballing.
And that's the big thing. We're talking about, you know, the Jace to the LeBlanc, who's going to get further ahead. If Dandy actually executes this dive up on the top side, that was a pretty big minion wave. You deny that from RF Legendary. You already got a kill for your LeBlanc now, so you set their top laner behind, you get your mid laner ahead, and then you're basically have given your team the late game already by ensuring that your split pusher is going to be stronger than theirs.
Right, and we also don't necessarily know how strong the Cho'Gath is going to be in that situation, too. We mentioned that Jace, very early game lane dominant champion, really needs those advantages to kind of keep him ahead in that split push later stage of the game. If you know anything about top lane tanks, sure, we haven't seen a lot of Cho'Gath in competitive play recently, but you think of things that you can compare it to, like when top lane Gragas was a thing, when Nautilus was a thing, when Maokai was a thing. They become these immovable forces that eventually will be knocking down, you know, your doors in these split push scenarios, and then utilizing the teleport play into fights to really get these flanks off. Cho'Gath also has the silence, too, that can really turn team fights around with teleport.
Yeah, but the thing that Cho'Gath lacks that a lot of those premier tanks did last season was they had guaranteed lockdown CC. The Nautilus ultimate, the Maokai W, the Poppy E, all these things are point-and-click abilities that are going to lock them up for you. On the side of Cho'Gath, that Q is notoriously difficult to land. The Rupture, yeah, people miss that all the time. The silence is relatively short range, so it can be a little bit hard for Cho'Gath to really get something off that TP flank, because he's still going to be needing to hit a skill shot. Whereas everyone else, if you land that good TP flank, you have something guaranteed to lock down a backline member.
He kind of, the way you're describing it kind of makes you feel like the Renekton's. Like, Renekton does wind up having, you know, the slice and dice to get into fights, but we see a lot of teleport plays when the Renekton has flash, we're like, oh, the engagement tool for them is the flash and then the Call the Meek stun. That's never going to land. And then it lands all the time in Challenger Series. Cho'Gath kind of has the makeup where he doesn't have a lockdown button, but he does have a delete button for his ulti.
That's 100% true. The ultimate it is a point and click. It does true damage. It messes people up. It might be able to turn some kills. You know, you don't need to CC them with anything but death, right?
Exactly. Best CC.
But that said, I mean, people, assuming that he's gotten enough games on this Cho'Gath, because it has been banned a fair amount in solo queue, if he's gotten enough practice on it, then there's no reason to say he can't land these Ruptures. I mean, you do have a relatively immobile mid laner in the Syndra who might fall prone to this kind of stuff. So he might find some people that he can kind of knock up with his Rupture. The other thing worth talking about with Cho'Gath, of course, that people tend to forget is his passive, the immense amount of sustain it gives him in lane. He has been, I mean, there has been a fair amount of pressure on the top side of the map with all the invades from Dandy, but, you know, we saw him just with a Doran shield and a potion still on him, basically at full health, surviving some of that early Jace harass. As long as he's able to kind of get some last hits on minions, he has a ton of sustain with that new Doran shield.
Yeah, and we've been kind of focusing down on what eUnited has brought to the table because they're the ones making moves in the early game here, and they're the ones that actually, you know, have some pretty exciting things that we're seeing for like the first time here on 7-14. But Big Gods Jackals, you know, they're on the back foot again. One of the things that we lamented about their series against eUnited last week was the fact that they consistently fell behind in the early game, and they always felt like that while they were making proactive plays and going for fights and trying to catch people out of position, they weren't able to capitalize as much as they could have because they were so far behind early game.
I think that's the thing for Big Gods Jackals is you have to give yourself a chance in the early game. We talked about them getting some potentially winning lanes. The LeBlanc being picked up and the Syndra, it's much more of a skill match, of course. But the top lane should be winning, and it looks like right now it's already getting turned in the dive. So overall, I like the idea that they went for, picking a lot of really individually strong champions and hoping Sir T can probably get involved and snowball some of them. But it's just that he got held down so early on. Then Dandy's put out so much pressure. It is hard for Big Gods Jackals to find a chance to make one of these big plays to really cement themselves a lead in one of the lanes.
Yeah, and it also seems like the Big Gods may kind of just fall back to their backup plan of eventually Fabi will get strong enough where he can carry. They have a Braum, they have a Gragas, they have 2 tanks that can provide a very powerful front line. They have a Syndra who, although she's behind right now, still puts out a lot of damage. They have a Jace that can put out some damage and potentially put some split push pressure down. But if you're Big Gods Jackals, you tried this twice already during the regular season against Big Gods Jackals, against eUnited, you weren't able to take a game off of them.
And the thing is, Caitlyn's not a very autonomous champion in the sense where it's like, all right, well, you got fed on a Lucian, put him on a side lane, maybe you can 1v1 somebody. Caitlyn, from ahead, is still mostly about control and setting up the traps and all this and that. And LeBlanc can ignore that. She doesn't need to go to where the Caitlyn is. She can go into a side lane. If Caitlyn tries to go there, she just goes somewhere else. So there's a lot less stuff like that. As it looks like we're going to get back into the game in a moment here. The dive comes in.
Ooh.
They get the kill.
Yeah, FLICKR is barely going to survive through that dive, and they are actually able to capitalize by picking up the kill on RF Legendary. A second kill going over to Dandy's Cosmos.
And like we said, the big thing about this was getting kind of a shutdown onto this Jace, misses out on some of that CS and XP. The next wave crashed into the turret as well. It's nice that Sir T is up there to be able to grab that. But this is a bit of a disastrous start. Already 1,500 gold advantage for eUnited just 7 minutes into the game. And it's where those gold advantages are. It's on Dandy, it's on Licorice, and it's on GBM.
And if you see here a replay of that dive as there's a pause in the middle of it. RF Legendary trying his darndest to survive throughout that dive. Almost takes down Licorice, but Dandy at this Kha'Zix just a little bit too much damage on the isolation.
You saw the Eat come in out of Licorice. Didn't actually get the kill, so he doesn't get any bigger off of it. Just able to throw in that damage to make sure that Dandy is able to secure the kill. As GBM continues to win trades aggressively in the mid lane.
Definitely sending a hawk shot cross map. Sees his mid laner going in upon the opposing mid laner. Also scouts out where Sir T is going to be over by his red buff. So with the added vision information, we'll see if eUnited are going to be continuing this proactive play. There's a Mountain Dragon on the map, and GBM getting super aggressive here. Takes the full unleashed power from Syndra and still survives.
Just no safety there. Pink Wolf's flash up, but was so low, and GBM comes up as well. Here we see the bot lane kicking things off as well.
As soon as definitely hits level 60, the Enchanted Crystal Arrow comes out. Zazel's trying to follow up some stun, but Bayano puts up the Unbreakable Shield, going to continue to mitigate that damage. But this minion wave is shoving up, and Dandy's on the backside.
Yeah, they get the heal out. They drop a ward down. They do have the teleport advantage as Legendary went top. There's the knock-up Rupture, and you're going to get a kill.
Ooh, and Licorice is going to get a stack on his Cho'Gath Feast ultimate from that one. Not only did they munch down on Caitlyn, but that was the person that was left at full health after that trade. Bayano just ditched.
We are in full snowball mode here, Tom. They get the teleport advantage from the gank on the top side. As soon as they see that they get that, they instantly transition their bot lane, or transition that advantage down to their bot lane with that TP play. And all of that's made even easier by the fact that GBM is winning mid lane as well, so they don't have to worry about a potential Syndra roam coming for cleanup. Complete domination of the early game here by eUnited.
Yep, we see Dandy going for the upgraded Q on his Kha'Zix Claws. We see the bottom lane here, like I said, as soon as definitely gets level 6, he shoots out the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, and they see a low HP Braum.
And this isn't that bad of an idea. You might think, well, why not save the ultimate for this dive that's coming in, and then you can really chain CC somebody. But you can just start that off early, given the immense advantage that they had, and then teleport in. You see that they try and get the traps down, but the Rupture, relatively long range. Fabi does not have his flash here, and so they're able to get that easy kill. And there you see the Cho'Gath beginning to get a little bit bigger.
Yep, his size is slowly growing, as is the lead that eUnited has in this early game. Already about 2,000 gold in their favor. We see they did not transition that into trying to take the first Drake of the game. A Mountain Drake is spawned on the map, but instead stole the blue buff away. So continuing to beat down upon Sir T and steal that jungle away.
I assume that that disconnect there was what we saw that pause about. These guys still a little bit ahead of the broadcast in terms of actual playing time towards viewing time. So he, as you see, RF Legendary was still moving around just fine, not actually disconnected from the game.
Well, maybe that was the excuse for having not the teleport available when it going onto the top side of the map. But that was, of course, because of the dive that happened. He had to teleport back up. Like you said, there's a huge minion wave he missed out on as soon as they had the teleport advantage. That was another reason why that dive on the bottom side was so successful. Just the fact that eUnited, I mean, the early game has always been extremely strong, but their team cohesion, specifically between FLICKR in the top lane and then, you know, his duo of former rookies now in their second split, their sophomore split of Challenger Series on the bottom side, have always kind of had this really good team communication between them.
I think that's the biggest surprise out of eUnited was the fact that they found such a solid native core with these rookies last split. That was one of the things that a lot of people, when they saw this roster, were saying, oh, well, who are these guys? Are they going to be able to match up to the European imports? And obviously they can as they make another dive on the top side.
Yeah, we see the scream come out to silence RF Legendary, and he gets chomped down upon by FLICKR, picking up his second kill of the game on this Cho'Gath, making it look pretty good.
Yeah, Dandy completely running over this game, involved in almost every single kill aside for that one mid lane solo kill. Also going to help his team get first turret of the game here as FLICKR picks this one up. A great performance out of them early on.
And that is not what you want to see if you're big Gods Jackals. Your top lane pick that you prioritize first in your champion select rotation. So, you know, the second pick of overall of the drafts into your red side. You sub in RF Legendary, you give him a comfort pickup, you put him against FLICKR, who was one of the standout players in the Challenger Series last split and one of the main factors of eUnited to really get things going, and he falls behind early on. He dies to Dandy in a dive, which you can't really fault him for in a 2v1 situation. You tried his best, but you didn't get the advantages out of that pick that you wanted to in the early game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing is Jace is a snowball-oriented pick. You need to be getting CS leads on your own, maybe dives if you receive some jungler attention, taking that turret down on your own eventually in a pushing situation, and just nothing like that has happened. He's fallen completely behind. Already a Righteous Glory completed on the side of FLICKR, wants to speed himself in range to be able to chomp down on some people. And like we said, already a 4,000 gold advantage. With a team that should have had a gold lead in the early game based off the laning phase, or the champions they picked for the laning phase.
So big Gods Jackals, troubles in the laning phase, seeing if they can rely on their later game side of Fab. We see Sir T trying to get a catch onto Danny, utilized the body slam flash a little early and the explosive cast, didn't necessarily have the support of Bayana and Pika move quite yet, and Dandy doesn't have to blow a summoner spell.
Here's
Just walks away, but Zeyzal, good headbutt pulverize, lands on two. Bayana's gonna get locked up with an enchanted crystal arrow, and the Braum ultimate will not be enough to stop anybody. Zeyzal picks up a kill for himself. FLICKR on the top side just solo chomps down onto RF Legendary. This is a massacre.
This is a massacre. Zeyzal wants to get involved with he got his own kill. Definitely the only one not quite on the board for a kill yet. As we see FLICKR continue to snowball up on that top side. Very difficult for Jace. We were talking about the immobility of Syndra. Same thing for Jace. One of the things he does best against melee matchups is that when they use their gap closers to go aggressive on Mess. Hold up. Might see a solo kill in the mid lane.
Whew, almost.
The best thing about Jace when he's getting engaged on by a melee champion is that he can use his knockback to create some distance. But against Cho'Gath, he doesn't really have a gap closer. The Rupture, the CC ability, does not actually need FLICKR to be next to him. There you see with that Righteous Glory, the immense amount of chase down potential, gets the knockback. But here's the Rupture again, lands, sets up the ultimate bite, gets him right there. And that's what I was saying is that, you know, Jace can knock Cho'Gath back, but that doesn't actually take him out of the threat range of the CC.
And you see the Righteous Glory being applied extremely early. So while FLICKR continues to do FLICKR things on the top side of the map, Dandy nets himself another kill. This time it was the Mountain Drake being taken for the side of eUnited. So they do want to getting that first Drake for themselves, which will help to knock out this outer ring of towers, which might be time to knock down considering they've gotten themselves this gold lead significantly just off the fact they have all these kills.
So, Tom, you and I always debate things about perfect games and all that, and I know it's a little bit early to say that this might happen, but the question right now is the Kazakhs giving up the kill as Pekamolf gets chunked out once again. The Kazakhs going for a suicide to deny a kill. It does show up on the scoreboard as a death. Does that ruin the perfect game?
Man, that's...
Because it's the right decision to go for the execute, huh?
I feel like I should know the answer to this question, but I don't. It doesn't pop up as a kill for Big Gods on the scoreboard,
right.
So... it's kind of like it's like a complete game, I think.
I would still call it a perfect game because he did the right thing, and he did not give Big Gods Jackals an advantage.
I know Jat was very interested in what Twitter and Reddit thought about this one, so maybe we'll have to ask him after this game. But
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, if eUnited continues to play they are right now, we might not have to wait very long, although this is a best-of-5 series. So now that eUnited has kind of shown some new picks, we'll see if Big Gods Jackals can adapt to what they've kind of put on the table here in 7-14. But then it also raises the question of eUnited is just doing this with brand new picks. Why can't they do it with the things they played the entire split?
That's the thing, is that we talk about, you know, it's 7-14, new patch, all this cool new stuff, but at the same time, LeBlanc's been strong for a long time. It just hasn't been a GBM-style champion. He breaks it out here. You probably are not prepared for him to take that champion. And right away you see the strength of it. And it's the kind of thing where now all of a sudden you have to add a new priority ban potentially, as well as this Cho'Gath. If you don't play it, Peking Wolf almost goes down once again, constantly getting chunked out. The bot lane turret getting low, but it looks like Zeyzal wants to start something off.
Yeah, bottom lane here for Big God Jackals is still maybe a little bit of a rock as they're continuing to push forward down onto the side of eUnited, but still. Zeyzal on this Alistar pickup. I mean, we haven't necessarily mentioned even a lot about the Alistar. We've seen Zeyzal utilizing his boost mobility early on. He's gone for the Ancient Coin line, which no longer gives you that extra kind of, the extra skill point when you complete the quest. Instead, you give allies bonus movement speed when they're running towards you, kind of like your mini point runner passive.
Yeah, a little Janna passive as well.
Yeah, so being able to utilize that for the engagement, being able to utilize that with this Cho'Gath who doesn't necessarily have a gap closer. And the fact of the matter is, he's art engaged combined with Deathly's Ash, and they haven't even made it out of lane phase yet.
I mean, that's the thing, is Fabi in the bot lane has actually done a good job of getting that turret down low, but with the complete loss of pressure in the jungle, top, and mid lane, it's very hard to just kind of set up that 2v2 and continue pushing in. You see, once again, they have to vacate the bottom lane because Dandy just completely unafraid of Sir T, runs into the bottom jungle, throws a ward behind. FLICKR can TP in as he's already really, really tanky as this top laner just 15 minutes in the game. So the bot lane has to leave the bottom turret, and now Deathly is able to grab this one for free just from the spillover from the other lanes.
And so if you're Big Gods Jackals, you're hard-pressed to find out how you're going to get back into this game. One of the things you can do is potentially make some forced proactive plays in the mid lane, but eUnited, they sipped this one out. Even though they were standing on a ward, they just dissuade Big Gods from trying to get anything done on GBM in the mid lane.
Yeah, both teams kind of going for a little bit of a bait there, hoping the other guy opens up on their mid lane and they can collapse in, but both teams have the same idea. Both teams back out. GBM continuing trying to get aggressive here. And he's got the Corrupting Potion taking away. He's got his Dark Seal stacking as well, already sitting on 5. A very, very scary LeBlanc.
Very scary LeBlanc, very scary everybody, pretty much, for eUnited. Even Deathly, though, he doesn't have a lot of kills on the board for himself, has built up a decent CS advantage, and that's in a melee versus melee support Caitlyn versus Ashe lane. So he's got an advantage where he might not necessarily have gotten them in the first place. But now Dandy getting jumped on here by Sir T, who's kind of waiting to brush this, and those Zeyzals there to help lock him up. Dandy slices him down. A third kill for the Kha'Zix as an Enchanted Crystal Arrow will land onto Bayano, and now Zeyzal trying to get in position for another Pulverize. The exhaust is down on Fabi. Flash, Pulverize, headbutt back into the rest of his team. Fabi's not going to live through this one. Almost gets a kill onto Dandy, but the complete or perfect game is still alive for eUnited.
Yeah, FLICKR deciding he doesn't need to TP down into that. They did have a ward in the jungle there that they might have been able to join in on, but instead wraps around the mid lane, makes sure that the Syndra does not feel safe there, which buys GBM space to grab that turret, and goes also for the solo kill. FLICKR wrapping around a second time.
Oh, the headbutt Pulverize is flashed away, but the Righteous Glory flash lockdown is there for FLICKR. Didn't quite have the feast up yet, so he decides to pick up the kill with a Feral Scream.
I was wondering why he didn't just nom him down real quick like that. Maybe could have waited a second longer. Here we also see the fact that eUnited, I don't even remember when we talked about it, but they grabbed the Rift Herald, dropped that one down the bot lane, and grabbed the second turret of that lane. That's all outers down now as well. 4 turrets in total for eUnited.
One of the things we were touching upon with the change in 7-14 was the fact that lethality scales, now that you have the level advantages, and now you have a Kha'Zix with this Duskblade of Drakthar picked up.
That's what I was going to hit on. We have our first 7-14 Duskblade of the North American Challenger Series. You might see a lot more of these if this game goes long enough. I'm sure Jace will grab one as well.
Yeah, but Jace is at a disadvantage here, where the Kha'Zix are at a huge advantage. I was going to say that, you know, lethality saw a buff where you increase in level and the lethality increases. I didn't see in the patch notes where eUnited increases in lethality with their level either.
Yeah, they're getting a lot more dangerous today. We see FLICKR already up at 3,500 health just about. It's going to keep going up as he eats people. I don't know how Big Gods Jackals plans on getting through all that health.
Well, they got Big Gods in their name, but they're the ones that are going up against the giant Cho'Gath here. But in the bottom side of the map, they're still trying to make proactive plays, but they just don't have the vision control. We saw Sir T trying to go for a body slam onto Danny, but utilizing the Kha'Zix invisibility, the Void Assault, just to get him out of there. And they were able to pick up a kill on the jungler who, I mean, at this point, Surti is kind of the only person that can make plays happen on Big God.
And I do want to say that I appreciate them going for that because they don't have good vision control, and they probably will never have good vision control when you're this far behind. It's so hard to walk in and make sure that you can get some wards down on the camp, and then you know that Dandy's not down there, and then you go for that play safely. Obviously, that's the correct methodology to making a play, but when you're so far behind, sometimes you do have to cut steps out, and one of them is get vision control, and you just kind of hope that he's not down there in that brush, and you can make that 3v2 play. So I appreciate that Big Gods Jackals is still trying to be aggressive. It's just unfortunate that they are so far behind that they can't really do it the correct way. 10,000
gold disadvantage for Big Gods, and they've lost 2 dragons at the same time. So that's going to be the side of eUnited, continuing to pressure mercilessly on all facets of Summoner's Rift. Top lane winds up going down to GBM as he utilizes that LeBlanc split push way more effectively than his Talia in the last best of series you saw between these two teams. They got the 1-3-1 split push down pat now. Last series they played against Big Gods Jackals, we said the Gnar pick coming in from FLICKR. They didn't necessarily play around that one to its fullest potential, and that's how Big Gods got back into this one. But now they got GBM as a side lane threat as well, and it's really difficult for Big Gods to mount the comeback.
Yeah, they also didn't have 11,000 gold lead last series, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. Not at 20 minutes.
Yeah, definitely not at 20 minutes. So a little bit easier to close out here if you are GBM on this LeBlanc pick. Sometimes when it's an even game, you have to be a little bit concerned about people collapsing on you, and if you don't execute correctly, will you lose the 1v1? At this point, they're so far ahead, they basically don't have to worry about much of anything. You see Licorice just run under the turret, baits out RF Legendary's Blade of the Rune King there, and just dips back into the jungle. Didn't even see his health bar dip.
Yeah, well, he's got the full combo going on, the Righteous Glory, the Warmog's Armor, and he's going for that Gargoyle Stone Plate next up, so that's going to be, you know, that ridiculous Cho'Gath ultimate.
Yeah, I was about to say, well, another thing that we mentioned with this ultimate was that it, scales off your health now, and there was a video out not too long ago, hit the front page of Reddit. I think it was Valkyrin who made it, where he, pops Gargoyle Stone Plate active to get the giant bonus health combined with the bonus health of his ultimate, and you stack all this other health, and you end up basically doing 1 billion true damage to anybody. So you're going to see Licorice actually legitimately start one-shotting people with the ultimate.
Zazel looks like he might be caught out, but he's going to use the Unbreakable Will. Gets himself very tanky because that one's got some extra damage reduction on it now. Fabi, in the meantime, trying to go onto Dandy, who's exhausted in the backline, but Licorice is teleported into the middle of everybody with GBM. The first kill gets picked up by Licorice as he doesn't even need the feast to take down Surti. Pick and Will's going to die on the backside of the fight as now RF Legendary's going to fall. 14 kills to 0. eUnited are destroying Big Gods.
Big Gods looking for anybody to open the fight up on. Of course, it's Zazel, who is that Alistar. We talk about some small buffs to his ultimate there, able to use it to survive that fight early on, buys enough time for the rest of eUnited to collapse in on it. Almost got GBM down, did get low, but couldn't finish him off. eUnited walks away with a 3-for-0, and they're going to take off this Baron as well.
So immediate turn on to Baron here from eUnited. They pretty much got everything they can need in order to try to close this game out against Big Gods Jackals. For 15,000 gold lead now almost, that the Baron buff has gone down. 14 kills to 0, double dragons. They got the Baron buff to push down, and Big Gods Jackals, they don't even have some members in double, well, now they do. Bayana finally hitting level 10.
Hey, there we go, minor victory. So here we see, Zazel trying to camp that pink rush and maybe, or pink ward and start something off. He gets jumped on, but he pops that ultimate, as well as getting that Mastery Shield. Comes out relatively healthy on the other end. Licorice just runs in as that big frontliner, able to chunk down multiple below. That big chunk of damage was from LeBlanc, I believe. It looked like Cho'Gath's ultimate was on cooldown, so that was not actually his ultimate. I assume it would do more damage than that.
At this point, yeah. Ooh, RF Legendary. Just going to get chopped to pieces by eUnited.
Yeah, it's really hard to play a squishy champion like Jace when you're this far behind, and it's not like eUnited lacks engage tools. They have an Alistar. They have a big Cho'Gath, and you see them just pressuring super hard around this turret. Zazel's starting to get pretty low, though.
Yeah, he doesn't look to be very afraid, though. Dandy, though, is going to get jumped on by the Syndra. He will wind up falling. No more perfect game, Mark. But eUnited are charging into the base of Big Gods Jackals. They've gotten 1 kill, but there's only 1 member left alive, and I don't even know if Bayana's going to survive for long enough. He will make it back to his summoner platform, but a mid lane inhibitor is going to go down for eUnited.
eUnited does not look like they want to back off either, continuing forward with this Baron-empowered push. They are missing Dandy, but the other members of the team are extremely fed as well. How are they going to get through LICKR? You see him just eat that shock blast and take almost no damage. They take the first Nexus turret down. Looks like this is going to be game.
Yeah, it looks like it here. 24 minutes into the game, eUnited will storm the base of Big Gods Jackals, and with still plenty of time to spare on their Baron buff, the first Nexus looks like it will fall this best-of-5 series. Zazel's going to go in. They're going to pad a little bit of their KDA stats, but once RF Legendary flashes away, the Nexus will be the main focus. 18 kills to 1. eUnited take game 1.
A dominating performance overall, almost a perfect game until that last kill by Dandy during that push gives that one up while he was diving. It's fine overall. I'm sure they're not worried about that. In the playoffs of all things, much more concerned about actually picking up that W. And I mean, you know, though he did get the kill over, I think you have to look at Dandy for kind of the MVP of that game. The early kill onto the Grogish shuts him down. Repeat gank into the mid lane, gets a kill, snowballing his split pusher, ganks up on the top side. All of that was insane.
Yeah, we heard from Definitely just after the series against Big Gods Jackals last week saying, like, yeah, it was a bit messy. We still 2-0'd Big Gods, but it wasn't as clean as we wanted to. You know, the Koreans were working on their visas. We didn't have a lot of practice time. This is with 1 week of full practice time and a brand new patch, and Dandy and GBM both having standout performances.
Yeah, luckily they do get to build off some existing synergy. It's not like this is their first week of practice, of course, but yeah, they adapted to the patch extremely well. You see them bust out the Cho'Gath pick, as well as the Kazakhs, 2 champions that are going to benefit from the changes, as well as bringing out the LeBlanc, a different look than we've seen out of GBM.
Yeah, and specifically coming out of that Kazakhs pickup, they got such huge early game advantages that let GBM's LeBlanc really run away with mid lane and let that Cho'Gath get ahead of the Jace. I mean, from early on, there's the first blood in the jungle, but then they started diving towers as early as level 4.
Yeah, I mean, you see early on, like we said, he already killed the Syndra once, getting LeBlanc ahead, then he shuts down the top side. You get this teleport back out of the Jace when he goes into lane. He instantly runs down bot lane, drops a ward to set up another TP play, then he influences the bot lane as well, makes a repeat gank up on the top side. Now the LICKR is just far enough ahead that he can basically push in a wave whenever. The one play that Big God Jackals tried to force down the bot side, he was sitting in this brush waiting for it. He anticipated Sir T face checking him, chunks him out really hard early on, and you can basically count all of the early game advantages in some way were influenced by Dandy early on.
Yeah, and the good thing for eUnited, though, is that they're able to hold on to those advantages and just ride them out towards the end stages of the game. They're able to play around the fact that LICKR is very strong, but also GBM on the LeBlanc pickup. Not only was he just making Pika move pretty much a non-factor, but he was moving around the map. He wasn't necessarily participating in a ton of kills, but he was putting pressure in areas. He was getting top lane towers pretty much for free when there were tier 2 towers. And there's nobody that could match up to him in the 1v1.
And that's the thing, I think, is you get some shades of Samsung White Dandy with this game overall, just because that's what he was known for, was just being so aggressive in the enemy jungler's face all the time, turning plays with the rest of his team. He was always well coordinated in dives, and a lot of these were the kind of things that he had to team up with somebody else to do. It wasn't just, oh, I'm on a solo mission, I don't need to worry about my communication, I'm just going to go make a play. The first one kind of like that, but the dive coordinating with GBM, the dive topside with LICKR, and then also the TP play bot side coordinating with LICKR as well. Very impressive stuff to see out of them, because this is a really team game. Even though it looks like a massive snowball and you want to point to just individual outplays, most of it was very intelligent stuff out of eUnited.
Yeah, and they played aggressive, but they played intelligently with it. And the fact of the matter is, even though Big Gods Jackals tried to make things happen as the game was going on, they didn't just kind of roll over and die. No matter how proactive they tried to play, they were too far behind to really capitalize on anything. And in the game-ending fight, it just holds true. They try to get a pick onto Zazel, but he stays alive for so long that all these members join up from eUnited.
Another champion on 7-14, eUnited using right away. This Alistar pick, it's always been extremely tanky with that ultimate. They try to open up onto him, desperate for a target. They can't quite do it. The wards are obviously behind them. eUnited were so far ahead. They, of course, have deep vision. That opens up a teleport flank for LICKR. GBM comes flying in the side as well. Dandy was also wrapping around. They just jump right onto the backline of Big Gods Jackals. Relatively immobile with the Jason Syndra picks, and they go down extremely fast.
All right, it was a minute and a half later. The game wound up ending, and they suffered their first death of the game that wasn't an execute.
There we go.
We're going to be headed for a break. There's more Challenger coming right up, so when we return, we'll see if Big Gods can tie the series or if eUnited jumps out to a 2-game lead. Dandy's gonna get leapt on there. Sir T has to flash away with a flash follow from Dandy. First blood secured for Kazakhs. Is he gonna flash after? He will,
oh, there's a minion.
He changed the minion, and Pikamu's gonna be able to, oh, he goes back in! eUnited are going to be continuing this proactive play. There's a Mountain Dragon on the map, and GBM getting super aggressive here. Now Dandy getting jumped on here by Sir T, who's gonna wait in the brushes, and those Azels there to help block him up. Flash, Pulverize, headbutt back into the rest of his team. Fabby's not gonna live through this one. How about Pulverize flash away, but the Righteous Glory flash flash. Lockdown is there for FLICKR. Dandy, though, is going to get jumped on by the Syndra. He will wind up falling. No more perfect game, Mark. But eUnited are charging into the base of Big Gods Jackals. Welcome back to the North American Challenger Series semifinals. We're heading into game 2 of our series here between eUnited and Big Gods Jackals after, well, pretty quick 24-minute game 1 from eUnited.
Yeah, it was a pretty massive stomp, most of it coming off the back of Dandy. If you look at his kill participation, it was very, very impressive. He was involved in almost all the kills early game before the map kind of exploded and broke down into a lot of solo kills. You saw Licorice start picking them up in the top lane. Bot lane was able to grab some as well. So he had a super impressive game, and especially just starting off with that invade right away, just setting the kind of the message for the game that, like, we're going to be in your face this whole time and killing Sir T at just level 3.
Yeah, and just kind of setting up the snowball that would eventually happen, only for himself, but also for his solo laners. Got JBM ahead with a very early game mid lane dive, got Licorice ahead off of that, but just kind of recalling, going back into the jungle and immediately diving the top lane, and then was a big participant on the bottom side of the map with that teleport play early on. eUnited just kind of putting full pedal to the metal here, some new picks on 7-14, but now Big God Jackals to get a chance to reset a little bit. They've chosen blue side for this game, so we'll see if anything changes up in the pick and ban phase for them.
I think that's the thing is, I can understand maybe you're not sure if the enemy team's going to play Cho'Gath. It is a complete menace up in the top side. And so you say, all right, well, we'll leave it up and maybe it falls to us on red side. Who knows? It's a pretty risky strategy overall, but I'm okay with Big Gods taking some risks in the draft phase, trying to get advantages. You saw them leave the Caitlyn up on red side, something that in previous patches was considered crazy. You didn't see that often. So they're obviously trying things out, trying to find their footing here on blue side now. If the Cho'Gath does fall through again, they can first pick it, assuming RF Legendary is able to play it.
Yeah, well, at the top of the day, you also mentioned that now we're on best of 5s. You have a little bit more room to kind of play around in the series. You have more adaptations to make between them. Big Gods Jackals, they got a lot to learn from that series, the last game they just played, because it was 18-1 in the kills department. There was 2 deaths on Danny. One of them was an execute, and they just kind of got bullied around all throughout the early game. So we'll see what adaptations they make here in this best of 5 series. I thought you might be in for a quick night.
I mean, that's the thing, is that we talk about this Cho'Gath pick being super strong and all that, but it wasn't like it just took over the game by itself. It was well coordinated on the side of United. Even that first blood by Dandy was keyed off the fact that definitely had shot a hawk shot into the bottom jungle, and they saw Sir-T clearing down there relatively low. Saw the wolf camp up, knew he would be there, and you know, Danny's kind of camped there and waited till it got a little bit lower before he kind of hopped over and then looked for that kill. So very impressive stuff on the side of eUnited, and we'll have to see if Big Gods Jackals can bounce back here.
Yeah, you summed it up really good right before the commercial break, where you said that even though Danny was the one to get things rolling, it wasn't just one person snowballing the map for eUnited and just kind of being the solo carry. It was a big team coordinated effort, and they utilized not only just the hawk shot and the team communication, but vision control, more importantly vision denial, as we kept seeing Big Gods Jackals have to wander into their own jungle blindly.
And here in the draft already, we see the fact that Cho'Gath banned out by eUnited. Don't want to risk giving that one over as a first pick. Not as willing to take risks in the draft, given that they probably consider themselves a stronger team. You don't want to give up an extremely strong power pick. And Big Gods Jackals banning away that LeBlanc right away.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, too, we've also seen them ban away the Caitlyn now that they're on blue side. So they may have a priority pick in their heads for the red side. It looks like it will be the Rek'Sai. It was banned away by Big Gods Jackals in the first game. This time around, they're on blue side. This is their priority pick that they're looking for.
I'm going to be interested to see how people choose to build Rek'Sai in competitive, given the fact that the AD is relatively stronger now with some of the more aggressive itemization choices, potentially. I mean, even when you did go Warrior on Rek'Sai in the past, you would still often go with things like Titanic Hydra second. Will we potentially see a more aggressive build out of the Rek'Sai? We'll have to wait and see. That said, with all these new priority champions bouncing up for both teams, the Galio falls through.
Yeah, and this is a Galio flex for eUnited as well. We've seen Zeyzal play in the support position, but looks like he will be going reprising his role on Alistar this game, as the Galio could be a top, it could be a mid lane flex pick, but still, like you said, priority pick that we would think would be crazy to be left open before, now falling through.
And the big thing is that just with their first 2 picks, eUnited have already secured themselves a monstrous front line, right? The amount of damage reduction that comes in with both these champions is very intimidating when you're trying to chew through somebody. And the thing, too, about the early Alistar pick is you're kind of saying to Big Gods Jackals, we're not scared of your bot lane. We don't think you can bully us to the point where you're exploiting some of Alistar's weaknesses early on. And we're going to get a ton of utility out of this pick later on in the game. So it's a little bit of a, you know, kind of disrespect in some sense to take Alistar blind so early on. I mean, there was a time when you would do that, when you could max E and kind of play every lane out safely and you know, just be on the back foot the whole time, but it's no longer quite like that with the heal now being on his passive.
Yeah, so a bit of a different play style from the Alistar, but like you said, United not afraid to just kind of flex their muscles a little bit. Zeyzal had a good performance on it in game number 1, didn't wind up dying, but again, not a lot of his team did. But it's going to be Kalista and Thresh, a big kind of bully lane coming out from the side of Big Gods Jackals. They say, you're going to blindly pick this Alistar and do us again, we're going to punish you for it, or try to.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing, is that this is kind of the test of the game, right? I mean, the Caitlyn pick, very strong, good at punishing things, but they paired up with the Braum, which is just a good matchup into the Alistar should you go late game. This time around, they're actually just taking 2 champions that should be able to bully this Alistar very hard. So if this is something that United is able to get away with, that spells big trouble for Big Gods Jackals in game 3, because you can expect another Alistar game if you're not able to ban it away. And like we said, with this big front line already secured, you can go ahead and grab that Kha'Zix pick. As we move into the second ban phase, already the Rumble taken out, and they have gotten rid of the Corki once again, which is something you want to see on eUnited. Don't ever want to give that over to Pekka. It is hands down his best champion in the meta right now.
Well, they banned it away in the first pick phase last time around, but this time by going, I guess, maybe setting it up with the Alistar blind pick, they're able to get that Corki banned away in the second ban phase and not let Pika Move take it. However, banning away some safe picks here with the Orianna in the mid lane, but also the Camille ban coming through, so this may be indicative of maybe wanting you to go for something like a Jarvan in the top lane from the side of RF Legendary, but also just taking away something that FLICKR can cause chaos with if it's a mid lane Galio.
And it's something we saw out of the TSM series this week is you combine that with the mid lane Galio pick, you have a ton of dive potential on the side laner. The Hextech ultimate locks him in place. The Galio ultimate comes on top of the Camille. You don't have anywhere to go. You just kind of get blown up. So feels like that they were anticipating that a little bit, given that we know Licorice is a fantastic Camille player. So understandable to see that banned out right away. And we see a Misfortune coming in.
An under the radar lethality.
Yeah, not the first one you think of. You think of the more utility based ones like the Jhin and Varus.
Well, this one just being a little bit more straight up about damage, a little bit more about potentially the team fight coming out from, you know, her ultimate, the bullet time, being able to shred through. It also combines extremely well with the Kha'Zix, as one of them is going to be building a Black Cleaver, specifically the Misfortune. Lowers all that armor, lowers the resistances already for the Kha'Zix, who's building, you know, the Duskblade like we saw last game.
So we'll have to see exactly how that works as well against Thresh and Kalista. Not a super mobile champion, so you might be in threat of one of those dangerous level 3 Flash Flay Lantern back ganks that you see out of the Thresh. As well as the fact that this is a Rek'Sai on blue side, you have some of those very, very exploitive jungle paths around the Raptor clear. You hit level 3 just 2.5 minutes into the game, and you gank while the enemy team is still level 1. So eUnited are going to have to be very aware of that as we see the Gnar taken blind, and eUnited grabs the Poppy.
Don't remember Poppy being picked into Gnar a lot, although this does solidify the fact that it's going to be a mid lane Galio, so there's going to be a lot of damage reliance on this Kha'Zix and on the Misfortunes. That armor shred would potentially be prioritized because you have a Poppy who is a very difficult tank to deal with in the later stages of the game, super annoying, no one really wants to have to deal with it. And you have Galio, who does have wave clear, does have an okay amount of damage, but also a big beefy front line. This is an eUnited lineup that just wants to kind of get up in your face again.
It is a little surprising to see that Poppy. I mean, so they take the Gnar, kind of forcing the Galio to have to flex mid. It makes sense. I mean, the Galio's happy to go there versus Syndra. Maybe a little bit difficult early on, but you just stack some resistances and you match up just fine versus Syndra. The surprising thing is what they chose to put into that position that they're flexing the Galio out of. The Poppy, way back when they initially came out, had a decent matchup into the Gnar because you just E at him, you put your W up, he can't hop away, you lock him down, and you had a lot of damage back then. Poppy has received a ton of nerfs since that time, so the individual matchup, I'm not quite sure how it goes anymore. I'm a little bit concerned that it might still be difficult for the Poppy, but you do have the good gank setup, like I said, being able to interrupt that jump.
Yeah, and not only that, but now that I'm kind of thinking about it, you have the steadfast presence from Poppy, you have, you know, the taunt coming in from Galio, and you have Alistar, who basically is just a no button if you're trying to engage on their backline. So Misfortune and Kha'Zix, who, like you mentioned, Misfortune specifically has to kind of be protected in the backline, not extremely mobile, just kind of stays in place to do the majority of her DPS. This is just basically a front wall that you're not going to be able to get through, whereas if you're big Gods Jackals, you have a little bit more of the guys who want to jump in. You can't get that big Gnar ult animation cancel initiation that you can get if the Poppy just puts up the W, the Alistar just headsbutt you backwards.
True, but if you ever do miss position and let's say definitely goes down early on in this Misfortune, your team comp is suddenly lacking a ton of damage, as well as the fact that just generally speaking, Misfortune isn't the highest DPS AD carry around. So this is a little bit curious of a draft for me out of eUnited. I understand it. You have a huge front line. You have a lot of engage potential. MF just kind of throws her damage in from the backside. Kha'Zix, as everyone gets low, starts leaping forward and going crazy. You also have some protection, like we said, out of the Galio being able to throw the damage reduction on the Kha'Zix, something we saw kind of premiered at MSI. All that said, it is a little surprising just how they got there. They could have got a better matchup on the top side. You mentioned the Jarvan. That does decent in Gnar, has gank set up as well. Then you have like a better damage threat potentially. So I'm a little surprised to see it go this way.
Yeah, so if you're at your big Gods Jackals, you know, we said eUnited threw out a lot of new things in 7-14 in game number 1. They're still kind of taking some new things as well. They're putting the Galio in the mid lane, which we haven't necessarily seen GBM play a heck of a lot of. If I recall, maybe like one game tops, but not a GBM
not a
champion.
ton, right.
Yeah. And then we got the Poppy in the top lane we haven't seen in a decent amount of time. And Misfortune in the bottom lane. The last time we saw her, she was mainly a support in the bottom side of the map. So then you have a lot of different kinds of things once again. And now if you're big Gods Jackals, you have some priority picks. You got your Rek'Sai, your first pick overall. Sir T was the guy who was trying to make things happen. Now you're going up against a team composition that we're a little perplexed about ourselves. This could be the game that you can try to win and bring the series back. Even if you lose this one, it's going to be difficult.
Right, and we talk about, okay, late game, you find a flank onto MF and you kill her instantly. How does eUnited win the team fight? You can also do that early game. If you're able to use, like we said, that Thresh just set up some ganks, or you do one of those aggressive paths down the bot side and gank at level 3 early on with the Rek'Sai using the creative pathing from the tunnels, you can also get a kill. And if you shut down the MF, it's the same thing as killing early in a team fight, kind of, where she's no longer a big threat over the game. She's been held down. You've snowballed off for a little bit. And so you have some of these potential opportunities to find ways to get leads. And then I'm still, like I said, just not sure how United's comp will play that out. All that said, it's going to be hard for Syndra. She's immobile. There's all this engaged stuff. There's all these front lines in the way. Who are you going to be able to actually get your Syndra ult on top of? Callista has a lot of engaged tools with the Thresh, but it feels like, once again, there's going to be this big front line blocking any target that you're going to want to throw it Thresh at, as well as who do you really want to hook other than Kha'Zix or MF on this team? Not too many choices.
Right, so big Gods Jackals, while they have some priority picks for themselves, we'll see if they're going to be able to execute on this team composition. Once again, they look like they have some pretty decent lane matchups. We'll see if they're able to take advantage of those, or if eUnited with another kind of unorthodox champion select here in Game 2, the second one we're seeing in the Challenger Series on 7-14, are going to be able to jump out to an early 2-0 series lead here in the Challenger Series Summer Semifinals. eUnited coming as the #1 seed, so we got high expectations for them against the #4 seed in Big Gods Jackals. We just didn't expect all these different champions being thrown out.
I mean, we talked about 7-14 being a little bit of a wild patch. Just not exactly how I thought it would be, you know? I mean, MF, yeah, it makes sense. Lethality got a bunch of buffs. You can see that one. Alistar got some buffs. Kha'Zix with all those lethality buffs. The Poppy comes out of nowhere for me.
I normally don't associate Poppy with lethality, but I mean, if there's going to be a lot of damage being thrown around, Poppy's like the late game tank that just never dies once you survive the lane phase. She was a good matchup into the Jace specifically. You know, that's not what the case is here now that you have RF Legendary and the Gnar. Mentioned we can just kind of deny any sort of initiation coming in, but we'll have to see how this one plays out. You know how much I love myself some Poppy.
Ah, I forgot you're a Poppy hater.
I am. He's my favorite champion.
I hope we stay up on the top side the entire early laning phase.
I really hope
I would love to see this Gnar Poppy matchup. I'm just really curious to how exactly it's going to play out.
I really want to focus on that creative jungle pathing you were talking about coming out from Sir T on the Rek'Sai pickup. More specifically, not just to detract from my Poppy hate, but the fact of the matter is that Sir T was the guy that Big Gods Jackals were looking to for those initiations that they were behind, but also the fact that Dandy abused him in the early game, and that's one of the big significant reasons they fell that far behind.
Oh, for sure. That was the big problem, was that early kill that he got. Sir T, hopefully gonna have a better bounce back game, but like we said, you gotta watch this Poppy early on, see exactly how this lane phase is gonna go. You see some Buckler harass come in, gonna throw down that Q, probably starting with that one.
I mean, when we used to cast the collegiate campus series. Actually, oh look, there's stuff on the bottom lane. Sorry, can't talk about top lane. Actually, definitely getting the heal blown extremely early on. You mentioned that level 3, the Thresh Flash Flay potential is out there, but also definitely not being super mobile and the Thresh being able to abuse the fact that Alistar is melee. It's getting up close and personal and forcing Summoner as well as level 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what you would expect out of this team, is the fact that they can kind of just run up to you level 1 and threaten to all in. And it's going to get even stronger when they hit level 2 here. But the fact is that they pushed too hard early on. They spoiled any potential level 3 cheese that Sir T has actually been setting up for, as well as the fact Dandy smites the way, denies the level 3 from the Rek'Sai, and he's just going to skedaddle out of there. Does not want to fall prone to this big jungle invade that's coming in on blue side here. They're going to take away his blue buff. Kind of unfortunate for Kha'Zix, but you got to think it might be worth it in the long run.
And you see Dandy immediately pathing to the opposite side, so we'll see if he winds up going for Sir T's blue buff or if he's going to do something else.
Ping does go down on it.
So we might see Dandy getting on that side of the map. PBM might get a little aggressive in the mid lane here against Pikamu Syndra. Rek'Sai's kind of wrapping around the backside here, but we see the Winds of War from Galio.
Yeah, so what's really nice here is that they actually saw Sir T kind of wrap around up into their jungle for a moment. They did drop a ward over the wall as well as getting that Scuttle Crab. Dandy doesn't look like he's 100% confident going for that blue buff, given the fact that the top side is pushed in as well as the fact that his mid lane is pushed in. So even though Sir T is in the bot side of the jungle, he is still scared of the solo lane collapse coming in. So overall, probably still a better trade for Big God Jackals, only because they had already kind of flubbed that early level 3 gank setup. Because normally what you want to do is you get into laning phase and you don't shove the lane quite that hard. So that way they're kind of exposed to the wraparound gank that only Rek'Sai can really do when you go for that Scuttle Crab XP Quint level 3. Dandy definitely had a read on it though. The fact that he was already down there gets the Scuttle Crab smite, but for the most part the gank had already been messed up by the all-in.
Oh, well, they're trying to go for something anyway. Surtees on the bottom side. The Lantern's going to come out. Actually, they wind up blocking onto Zeyzal, who tries to pulverize his ADC out of that one. A flash over from Fabi. The Ignite's ticking down, and Zeyzal with a health potion will barely stay alive.
And this is what we were saying. It was a little bit of a disrespect out of eUnited to take this Alistar pick so early on blind. Getting abused super hard. So far, they've been hanging even in CS, but they've lost all their summoners down the bot lane already for just an Ignite and a flash on the side of Big Gods Jackals. Things are not going to get any easier here. They're going to shove this one in, probably going to go for a reset and continue to try and keep this pressure up on the bot side.
We mentioned that going over the team composition, you shut down this Misfortune early on. It's basically like taking her out of a fight in the later stages of the game. She doesn't have the item advantage she needs to really, well, to utilize the term again, like snowball the advantages that she would normally get during this lane phase. So they're punishing the Alistar in tandem. They're punishing the Misfortune, and then who else on eUnited will wind up dealing damage? That and the fact that you're playing into Big Gods Jackal's strengths by getting Fabi, the guy who is their late game carry, the guy who really has kind of been the backbone for their team, ahead.
Definitely some questionable choices made in eUnited's draft phase, both in terms of the comp and the early laning phase choices. FLICKR starting to get chased down a little bit here by the Gnar.
Well, turns it back around, though. It does still have the heroic charge available, but RF Legendary is building up a decent Gnar bar. Chasing that onto the Poppy.
This is kind of what I was saying, where I actually was a little curious about how this laning phase would go, just because, FLICKR can go charge in with the E, and you can then with the heroic charge, and you put up the Steadfast Present, can't hop out as Gnar, but if you're just ahead in trades already, you don't need to hop away necessarily. You can wait out the Steadfast Presence and just auto the Poppy, and that's one of the things that you couldn't do previously in the matchup, was just the Poppy was too strong. But like I said, she received a ton of nerfs since then. That was way back in Season 5, I think, when we initially saw this matchup.
And so on the top side of the map, RF Legendary finds himself at even CS, no strict advantages, although he does have his jungler coming around the backside. There's no wards in the brushes for FLICKR to sniff this one out, but he has a decent back timing, hits level 6. Has a decent amount of gold in his pocket, and will decide to go back as RF Legendary had gone so already. On back got the Phage for himself as he picks that up and utilizes the teleport to get back to lane. But now we're going to see another first item here, 714, the Bramble Vest coming in.
Hopefully that works out. We see some initiation start down here on the bot side.
Yeah, definitely getting hooked in by Biano, and even though he goes in, it looks like they're trying to buy time to get Galio in range. The hero's entrance comes in, and now there's a Galio and an Alistar here. Biano has to flash away. Fabi, though, trying to leap through, will wind up getting first blood. He's going to wind up going down shortly after that one to GBM, but it's going to be Big Gods Jackals getting a kill in first blood in a 2 versus 3.
Overall, a relatively intelligent play by eUnited to not kite back to their turret, but actually swing up to the river to try and get closer to GBM to get that ult in faster. He's able to join up with the rest of his team, but they throw all their focus down onto Biano, who is actually the one who still had his flash up. So as we take a look at how this fight starts out again, able to land the hook basically through the Alistar, whose headbutt pulverized, that put him through it. They kite to the left. He's able to collapse here, but they should have looked for Fabi. Fabi has no flash available right now, but Biano does. So the heal comes in, keeps him healthy enough, as well as gets him out of the fight. And now Fabi is the one who is able to kind of go in while all that focus is down on the Thresh, pick up that kill, end up in a 1-for-1 trade. So small misplay by eUnited there.
Yeah, so while eUnited loses out on the bottom side of the map for first blood, Danny's going to continue to be aggressive and take his red buff on the top side of the map here at level 5. Mid lane matchup, GBN roam down, got himself a kill, but he is at a level disadvantage for the time being as Pika Roof is at level 7, although he himself will hit 7. Top side of the map, we see FLICKR and RF Legendary continuing to trade blows back and forth. And after Big Gods Jackals, I mean, this is a stark contrast to where you were at 8 minutes in the game in game number 1. eUnited, you're basically even in gold with them, just have a couple hundred actually in your advantage. RF Legendary is at a decent spot in this matchup, has not died yet, hasn't gotten towered over, hasn't gotten a 20 CS deficit at this point. So you basically shored up the holes of the early game that you had problems with last time around. And if you're eUnited, I mean, you have a bit more of a scaling competition. You don't have to snowball as hard early on.
eUnited definitely held in check a little bit this time around. The question that we had, of course, was how do these comps interact later in the game? Big Gods have not quite snowballed that bot lane advantage like you would have hoped. They do have a lot of CS leads. That's why you see the gold advantage, about 400, 300 at this point. Also off the bonus gold from the first blood. But the big question is, will United's comp actually struggle to be executed in the late game, assuming that it kind of gets into this mid-late game at an even gold lead? Still a big question mark for me.
Yeah, eUnited have been touted as the team that has some of the better team cohesion in the Challenger Series. Both of the United squads actually coming into the forefront of that. GCU historically doing it later on. United kind of clicking from the get-go here as FLICKR is getting jumped on here. RF Legendary gonna go Mega. The boulder toss does get dodged out there by Lollipoppy. Definitely trying to get some ward clearing going on, but Viano's going to find another hook. This Thresh pickup paying dividends here. Flash away from Deathly. Does have the bullet time available. He's waiting to try to get into a safe spot. Rek'Sai, however, is going to utilize that ultimate to wind up picking up a kill onto MF. Dandy's able to trade a kill. He flashes forward, leads on to Fabi, but a flay out of the flash will mitigate that damage. Now Dandy trying to turn into Viano. Red Bus ticking away. One more Q. The smite to follow through as well. Dandy picks up 2 for himself.
Overall, not a bad fight on the side of eUnited. Sir T got a little aggressive trying to finish off the MF there, but he kind of had to go for that because if you let her kite out away from that, that bullet time is going to wreck you over the top. Is able to use some of those invulnerability frames off the ultimate to jump onto the MF and make sure he gets that kill. We'll take another look at it as, once again, definitely just a little caught out of position. It's one of those things where it's, why is Definitely the one clearing the ward as opposed to Zeyzal, the Alistar? This is kind of what leads to this fight going so wrong. It definitely gets hooked right away. There you see Sir T dodging out on some of the bullet time damage to make sure that he's able to collapse on that kill, but that puts him out of position. Multiple targets keep getting isolated, which is exactly what a Kha'Zix wants. Almost able to finish off Flabby, but a nice play by Viano keeps him alive. And not too bad overall, but still not what you want for your winning bot lane.
Well, looks like that Big God's trying to keep up the pressure here. Sir T tries to go into Licorice, but he's just too tanky. Gets the stun against the wall, gets the Galio damage reduction. Now the taunt comes through as well. ARP Legendary gonna get a Justice Punch to the face. He's trying to find himself a Poppy, but he's not gonna find anything but the cold embrace of death. Licorice picks up a kill.
And once again, GBM getting out of the laning phase onto the map early on, just 10 minutes, following up on another aggressive play out of Big Gods Jackals that is able to turn around in eUnited's favor. Really impressive stuff out of him as it looked like they had been pushing a little bit too hard, but here we go again. GBM teleports back into the mid lane. He's setting up his own play.
Immediately goes back down to the bottom side of the map. Oh, there's control ward right there, so they don't know he's in there. The taunt coming out from the brush. GBM gonna knock up on the Fabi. He gets knocked all around by the Alistar follow-up, but he will get the Lantern to safety. eUnited, despite being behind, or not behind, but being even with Big Gods Jackals in this game, not having the same advantages, GBM is still continuing to be a force around this map.
So here we see that play up on the top side. Sir T wants to kick this off, gets stunned up, not quite able to get the knockup how he wants, gets it there. But the Poppy had already done so much damage that by the time GBN comes in and finishes him off, he gets kind of messed up. There's that taunt into Justice Punch combo, like you said, not actually able to get an auto attack onto Licorice. And at this point, GBM has done so much work on his own. Licorice walks back up, pops him with the buckler, catches it, gets that nice shield. Tom's favorite animation in the game. And eUnited grab gold lead now off the back of countering some of this aggression out of Big God Jackals.
Really off the back of GBM, and this is a different.
Oh yeah.
This is like, what was it, week 1 or I think it was week 1. We saw GBM on the Lissandra pickup, moving around the map and making things happen for all of his side lanes pretty much. Now he's doing it on a champion that has an ultimate to help him out. This is a different shade of GBM.
Well, this is one of the things you hear about Galio mid lane is that it's just so difficult to play against because you can't punish it in lane that well. Syndra, one of the most lane dominant champions in the game, has a hard time versus him because his early wave clear is decent enough. He's able to take some trades, he just heals up, and then he goes back and gets his first MR item. No longer can you shove him out of lane, and then after that, he just matches your push and runs around and either sets up his own plays with his team. You know, he's a great diving champion, or if you try getting aggressive, he roams down to those plays and cuts those off. So he's such a difficult champion to play against in the mid lane. That's why it was a bit of a surprise to see it go through the draft phase early on and not even get first picked away.
We saw definitely utilizing the bullet time in the bottom lane for a bit of wave clear duties, getting a little bit of damage on the Fabi and just forcing the Kalista to hop, skip, and jump away. Now Dandy walks over a control ward, but doesn't look like he's too deterred by that one. Maybe looking for a dive here, but there's no minion wave as RF Legendary doing a good job of clearing that one out.
Yeah, Dandy was wrapping around the backside potentially to join in. GBM had kind of left the mid lane as well and started fainting up there. So eUnited looking for a dive. Big God Jackals were reacting well to it, intelligently called off by eUnited. Both teams back off from that situation, and there we go. MF grabs her Duskblade already.
So first Dust Blade of this game being completed there. So we had some lethality being built up, as well as some tankiness coming out from the side of eUnited. On the flip side, though, for Big Gods Jackals, they're going a little bit more tried and true. We had questions as to what Sir T was going to prioritize on the rec side. He has gone for the Cinder Hulk, since that one got buffed in the previous patch, 7.13. That's risen to more kind of popularity over the Warrior build here. We'll see if he winds up going for a bit more of a damage-centric build, going for the Titanic Hydra, or if he is going to be a big, beefy frontline for his team as Biano, the other member of the frontline here from Big Gods Jackals, gets caught up by eUnited once again. The brush bait coming out from GBM is effective. He goes on to a killing spree.
Really nice play out of GBM. Last time it was Dandy taking over the game early on. You got to give GBM credit this time. Swayed the bot lane, swayed the top lane, and now he's being able to get aggressive in the enemy team's jungle.
For the longest time throughout, the challenger split, we said eUnited, they were the #1 team. They worked well with their team communication. They were kind of the complete package. We saw the graph at the beginning of the show that kind of summarized how they are 1 or 2 and basically all the different stat categories across their team. One of the things we didn't see was big star power coming out from GBM, or Danny being, like the Samsung White Danny that we were mentioning previously. But in this series specifically, both GBM and Danny have stepped up and look like a return to their peak form.
Who knows, maybe a bit of the big game player attitude coming back. So one of the things about Samsung White was that they had some games during that Worlds run where they didn't look particularly impressive. Some people even said, oh my God, they're trolling. But when push came to shove, they absolutely decimated people. And once again here, first round of the playoffs, crushing Big Gods Jackals.
Yeah, eUnited definitely showing that they want to make it to the Challenger Finals, and they want to be the ones that win it this time, although their opponent will be determined tomorrow, where we have the Tempo Storm versus GCU matchup. That's another best-of-5 coming at you tomorrow. In case you wanted a double dose of Challenger Series action, we still have potentially a 5-game series here. Big Gods Jackals, though, they have fallen behind and lost the early game advantage. They're down and definitely not out.
Not out yet. They still are only down 3,000 gold compared to last game. At this point, I believe it was more like 6,000. So a better game overall, and like we said, maybe still some comp concerns if this MF drops down early on. The Kazakhs does have a lot of damage, but it might be a little bit hard to actually get off. I mean, it's just going to be a big pig pile by the rest of eUnited's comp, really. All of them are going to be jumping onto a target, so Big God Jackals can kind of kite out of that. Why are you looking at me like pig pile is a weird term?
Pig pile's not exactly what I would think.
Well, I mean, that's what it is. You got 4 melee champions all diving onto somebody. It's a pig pile.
All right. I've just never really heard the term pig pile. That might be a Massachusetts thing, not a Jersey thing. But
who knows?
Big Gods Jackals bottom lane, where they did have some advantages getting jumped on here by eUnited. And teleport coming in as well from FLICKR. eUnited are in full commitment to this one. FLICKR's going to try to zone away Biano and Sir T. RF Legendary teleported into the fray as well, but that's underneath the tower by Fabi. Big Gods Jackals may have been able to dissuade this dive here from eUnited, but eUnited with grouped up 5 on the bottom side, looking like they might try to push down this tower. But nope, they're going to back away and make it back towards mid lane. So good response from Big Gods Jackals here.
Only cost Sir T is flash. Everyone else able to get out of that one for free. Very scary for a moment there, though, because if you land some of that chain CC with the MF bullet time coming over the top, that can end up a bad play. Now Syndra caught a little out of position.
Ooh, Pigmove doesn't have a lot of mana, doesn't have enough to scatter the weak backwards, as the 2 tanks of Licorice and GBM don't have a lot to kind of chase down on the Syndra and Executor. So he will get out alive, but Licorice on this Poppy pickup now, he's teleported down to the bottom, walking his way back up to the top side. I mean, he's survived the lane phase against RF Legendary relatively unscathed. He kind of has, this weird bread and butter build for Poppy, where he kind of goes for a bunch of components for later game items to get him through the lane phase, so he can itemize against all different facets, get some cooldown reduction, have a bunch of these different things coming out. But once he wants to completing that first item, we'll really see how annoying this Poppy pickup can be.
Yeah, a little bit of a Build-A-Bear item selection right now.
I understand that terminology.
Yeah. Grabbing whatever he can, making it work.
Ooh, Zazel.
Getting a little low. Able to be kept safe. Sir T might find an opening. He lands the Q.
Oh, the Prey Seeker is landed. Is he going to wind up going in with the ultimate? Looks like the answer is no, because eUnited has a lot of members there, and there's a tower still in their way. Big Gods Jackals, though, are going to try to force eUnited out of this mid lane area, but once again, Licorice and GBM are just kind of staying steadfast in this mid lane. Pigmo still barely any mana to his name. He's not going to be able to wave clear here forever.
I mean, that's one of the things that eUnited's comp will struggle with as well, assuming Big Gods Jackals is able to stay relatively even in the game, is that they don't have great siege. They don't have great, ways to set up in front of a turret and just kind of force it down. They can dive you for sure, but if you're there with enough people, as RF now, speaking of dives.
Yeah, they're going to start it off, and Dandy starts off with the tower tank, forces the flash away from RF Legendary, and here's the Poppy to follow up, and Dandy gets the kill track.
Really nicely set up by eUnited there. They kind of knew he was coming up there. You saw Dandy sitting over the wall, waiting for him to get under the turret, and then The Poppy was in the mid lane, rotates up as well. They get that dive off, they get a kill. They're going to grab their first turret of the game, I believe. Giving the solo gold over to FLICKR. That's going to be a very, very big Poppy.
Wow, that is an 18-minute and 40-second first tower. It is a huge difference compared to game number 1 when eUnited took the first tower like sub 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, much slower paced game. We saw that aggression coming out of Big Gods Jackals down the bot side. They almost were able to kind of blow that lead open, but they couldn't quite convert on the plays. And one of the kind of hidden upsides to that for eUnited is that, as we see a dive, once again, this time the bot side.
Alistar headbutt pulverized into the hero's entrance, but a good Fates call coming out from the Kalista, going to save Bayano's life. And it looks like the Surtees on the bottom side to collapse. Danny, in the meantime, is getting the Rift Herald on the top side of the map. But Big Gods Jackals didn't lose anybody.
Nope, could have gone worse for Big Gods Jackals, but once again, you see the utility of that Kalista pick, able to save Bayano, but he's still low health, still not able to defend this turret. Looks like the second one of the game going to be taken here by eUnited.
Yeah, may have taken 18.5-ish minutes for the first tower to fall, but the second one falls like a domino right after that one, just a minute later. So Big Gods Jackals, while they were hanging tight in the early game here against eUnited, now the towers have fallen down, the lead has ballooned for the side of eUnited, now about a 5,000 gold advantage for themselves. And we're at the 20-minute mark. It's not the same 10,000 gold lead as it was in the last game, but it's still a massive amount of gold in favor of eUnited.
Danny was eyeing that 1v1 against RF Legendary, doesn't decide to take it. And like I was saying, one of the hidden advantages with all that aggression down the bot side, how telegraphed all that was the fact that it let Licorice play top lane a little bit more unsafe than you would normally expect to see. He was down at around 200, 300 health multiple times, a little pushed up in lane because he knew Surtee was down that bot side. As long as he avoids the all-in by RF Legendary, you can take as much harass as you want. Just make sure you don't die, you get your recall off, and you go home. The concern is sometimes when you know that a jungler might jump on you and bring that extra CC. You never really had to worry about that.
Well, we see Big Gods Jackals and Surtee continue to try to make movements on the map to take the Scuttle Crab around the Baron Pit areas. That has now spawned the Licorice collapsing from the top side. They have a ward in that brush to see RF and Surtee. The Lantern goes out, but the taunt's going to come through. They're trying to make sure RF can't take it, but he does wind up jumping back onto it, so he's able to get out of there. He's going to go to mini very shortly after that, and there is a Rift Herald on the side of eUnited, so Big Gods Jackals have to stay in this kind of ARAM style mode to not let that tower fall.
I'm surprised they didn't just use it there. As long as they dropped it far enough back and kind of let their front line protect it, making sure that Big Gods Jackals didn't engage on it, I'm sure that Rift Herald would have had enough damage to take down that last turret. Maybe they're trying to save it for a situation that turret's already very low. Maybe they think they can get it another time.
Ooh, they're trying to jump on the Licorice. She's kind of left out to dry a little bit. We are going to see the Rift Herald being summoned at the same time, but the Poppy Copter's going to go off. Winds up knocking back a peek and whoop, but not before he gets a parting shot kill from that ultimate onto Licorice. Definitely, though, with the bullet time rips across the team, and RF Legendary might be mega, but he goes down.
We talk about some of the hubris almost out of eUnited, sometimes think they're tankier than they are. Licorice waited a long time before charging up that Poppy Copter to knock people off of him. Able to get taken out there by the Cinder ultimate at the last second. And we were also talking about maybe saving that Rift Herald for a more opportune moment. They drop it when all that skirmish is breaking out up in the mid lane. They leave it down the bot side. It takes the turret on its own, and they're able to grab that mid lane turret that was already so low. So able to grab an extra turret with a good call out of eUnited there.
Yeah, and they balloon their lead now to almost a 7,000 gold advantage. 6.5, I guess, now that some of the gold has kind of settled down. But more importantly, we're getting big item spikes. There's a Righteous Glory that's been completed as the first item here for Licorice's Poppy. We've seen a Duskblade of Drakthar picked up for Kha'Zix as well as the Misfortune. And interestingly enough, we now have GBM going for not just an adaptive helm to, you know, stave off some of the persistent damage from those Cinder Orbs, but also gone for a Hextech Proto Belt, which is a different shade of Galio than we're used to.
This is a very different shade of Galio. I appreciate going for the extra offensive itemization, given the fact that we were talking about eUnited's comp potentially lacking damage. You want to make sure that you can bring some extra burst to the team comp. That's all fine. I mean, we have a soul killer of all items on the Galio as well, but the adaptive helm, a heavily criticized item by some other casters. You know, I don't want to single anybody out, but some people don't think it's the best item to focus, even against Syndra, a champion that does have a little bit of a spammable spell, works on her ultimate, but it's hard to justify it over some other MR items that can do a little bit more for you. There's no other magic damage dealers, really, so I understand not wanting to go for the Abyssal Mask, another popular first item on the side of mid lane Galios. But all that said, you could have potentially gone for, even just for yourself, to amp your damage if you are going for that more aggressive build in the first place.
Yeah, we've seen Spirit Visage be something that Galio has gone for in the past, and some other itemization choices, but this is GBM. He's built a Proto Belt as his second item, so he's in his own little world here with his Magi Soul Stealer 8 stack. We also see a Ghost Blade completed for Misfortune, so double lethality items picked up for her. Of course, the Ghost Blade has been shifted to be more of kind of the movement speed-based item. We've seen a lot of the Assassins pick this one up, but, marksmen like the Misfortune and the Jin, who aren't as mobile themselves, pick this one up for the positioning in those team fights and the ability to kind of get themselves out of sticky situations to get jumped on.
Very important for a Misfortune because the way she works is she just wants to get set up in the right spot and then drop her ultimate. Doesn't need to be kiting out really the whole time. It's just get to where you want to be, drop that ultimate. Ghost Blade going to help out with that a little bit. And here we see eUnited early on starting pressure on Baron. They're actually going to start this one off.
Yeah, they baited out the first Scrying Orb coming out from the side of Big Gods Jackals, but Peekaboo has another one. So the second one goes down. It looks like eUnited are looking to try to turn this one into a fight. Good Scatter of the Weak stops the engage coming out from that Licorice teleport. And eUnited try to Baron bait, try to get a fight. Big Gods Jackals disengage.
A little bit premature on turning off that Baron there. I understand you don't want to get forced down too low while baiting it in, but Big Gods Jackals weren't that far into their own jungle at that point. They go for an early teleport. Big God just stuns out Licorice, backs off, and now they're down a teleport. They feel pressure to force another play as RF Legendary is still splitting down the bot side.
So, well, they have Licorice in the fray now, so they have their big beefy tank here, so Poppy's going to be able to tank up this Baron. It's going down pretty quick. The Poppy Cop is going to wind up knocking out Sir T, so there's no smite available for the smite fight. Syndra might be able to try to steal it, but Kha'Zix is going to be able to smite that one away easy. Now they turn on to RF Legendary, who teleports in, but he's Mini-Gnar. Both of the summoner spells are down, and in addition to that, GBM's be able to pick up a kill onto Peek and move Syndra. The Poppy charging forward with the heroic charge onto Sir T, knocks him against the wall. He's taking up all the spears, but they still have the Galio ultimate, so the dive is coming in for eUnited. 5 members strong are going through the tower. They pick up 4, they pick up a Baron, and they're going for more.
eUnited forced that Baron completely on Big Gods Jackals. Really nice Poppy ultimate, chaining it off the Alistair stun, making sure that Sir T cannot flash over it. It's a relatively telegraphed ability, and when you're coming for that Baron steal attempt against the Poppy, that's the only thing you have to look out for. Now, that said, maybe Big Gods Jackal is not too familiar at playing against the Poppy, but either way, well executed by eUnited. They take out the smite threat, they finish off the Baron before turning down and focusing multiple members of Big Gods Jackals. And like you said, this Mini-Gnar comes in. He had just actually exhausted himself mid-teleport. You see him come in with that little bit of blue on him. That just shows that he is going into his mini hyper state. So he has no tankiness really available. He just gets blown up by Deathly, and then the rest of the team, without their front line available, just get melted and chased down.
Even the follow-through down onto Sir T on the Rek'Sai afterwards, eUnited were unafraid to dive through because they still had the Galio ultimate. They still had everything they needed to go through that tower.
Yeah, you saw there were quite a few Ren stacks onto Poppy there, but with the armor and the damage reduction coming in from GBM's ultimate, as well as picking up the buckler, Holmes took no damage from all those stacks.
Yeah, more importantly, the fact that Fabi, who was stuck hitting the Poppy the entire fight, and he kind of had to kite back the entire time. No longer can the Kalista just sit there in the front line and wail on the tanks and just heal off of the fact that she has that Blade of the Rune King and has the Warlord's Bloodlust. The Bramble Vest is going to be cutting through with the Grievous Wounds, and we already saw the effects on that. Fabi wasn't healthy in that fight. He had to run away.
Yeah, and he has no armor pen either, so we talk about some of the early armor itemization that came in for Licorice, given the fact that he is against physical damage dealing top and jungler. It's no surprise to see the AD carry struggling to do anything against him as well.
Well, Sir T, maybe getting a little desperate, tries to use the ultimate to jump onto Dandy, but he's going to get burst out. He isolates himself. Zazel not able to pulverize through the lantern, but on the backside here, GBM is just 1v2 here. Dandy flashes forward. We'll end up eating the Syndra ultimate, but it will barely stay alive because the damage reduction, GBM going to utilize that Protobot after a flash. They're just ripping through the side of Big Gods Jackals. eUnited, it may have taken a little bit longer, but now they are decimating Big.
Another 4-for-0 right after they finish off that Baron. They get another one in the top jungle. Big Gods wanted to find an opening, couldn't quite do it. Dandy did get pretty low after he jumped in to finish off Fabi, but really just heads-up play all around by eUnited. You see the Galio ultimate come in again. He starts trying to lifesteal off the wave a little bit, is able to heal up enough to stay alive, and with that, they grab their mid inhibitor and the top inner turret.
And this is Big Gods Jackals struggling to get anything done. We saw the engage started off by Sir T, utilizes the Rek'Sai ultimate to just jump down onto the Kha'Zix, and he just caught out of position. The backside here, GBM, we saw him just pushing up the lane, jumps in here and completely takes over this fight.
Yeah, almost goes down there, just barely lives through that Syndra stun. And you saw the MF ultimate come over the top, throwing in some nice damage. And then, yeah, like we said, this front line is so tanky. You know, we were kind of talking about it from an even state a lot. As we see, hold on, Danny might be caught out once again.
Oh, Sir T getting chunked out. RF Legendary. No real big Gnar bar quite yet, so he's not going to be able to wind up utilizing that Gnar ultimate to shove them back against the wall and try to set up a fight for Big Gods Jackals. We mentioned the tankiness of the front line. Now, Poppy has Righteous Glory, has the Bramble Vest, completed Gargoyle Stone Plate, has a Spirit Visage for herself. Also, we see GBM opting for his third item after, you know, his, you know, quote-unquote standard Adaptive Elm Proto Belt Medjai's build. Why not get a Warmog's armor?
I mean, that's the thing, is that, like I was saying, we were talking about eUnited's comp from even or slightly ahead, and having some concerns about how it would operate. Well, when it's super far ahead and you have this much engage and this much tankiness, there is no way for Big Gods Jackals to peel you off their backline. And you see them just being able to charge through all these turrets, all this kiting out that Big Gods Jackals is trying to do. And got to give this comp a little bit more credit than I gave it initially. It has so much frontlining potential that they almost never need to be scared.
Well, Big Gods Jackals trying to get an engagement down onto eUnited. Surti and Bayano trying to get to the backline, but definitely and Dandy are so well protected by that beefy front line from eUnited. The full time goes through, gets Surti and ARP Legendary extremely low, but it's just going to force them away from this tower here as eUnited don't even need a Baron buff anymore to push down into the base of Big Gods Jackals.
Grabbing their second inhibitor of the game, this time topside. No kills though, and they did get a little low during that engage. They don't have a lot of their cooldowns available, so they probably will have to back out here. But another nice push by eUnited.
Well, GBM's got this Warmog's armor. He's regenerating 99 HP every second he's out of combat, and that's in addition to the fact that he has an Ocean Drake picked up on their side as well.
Oh, GBM will be just fine.
Yeah.
But they are down all their ultimates, so it's a little bit hard to go for that kind of final push. So they're going to back off, going to spend some more of that gold that they have so much of. More armor coming in for multiple members of the front line of eUnited.
I mentioned this Misfortune pickup isn't going to position properly, isn't going to deal enough damage. It hasn't had to at this point in time, but very quietly definitely has been building up a very wide array of different items in his arsenal. It's kind of combining two of the old styles of Misfortune. There is the standard lethality build, which had gotten strictly buffed on 7.14 with the changes to lethality, but also going for pieces of the critical strike build. So even if Misfortune's ultimate isn't going to be dealing damage, he has a lot of auto attack pickup here. He has the Essence Reaver for cooldown reduction, the Infinity Edge to really let those crits rain through, and the lethality for all the armor threat he needs at this point in the game.
We talk about maybe grabbing the Black Cleaver for the MF, but it looks like instead Dandy has picked that one up. It has been kind of being bumped more and more towards health instead of AD, so it makes sense to put it on the guy who might be jumping in a little bit. So overall, eUnited super far ahead. And like you said, yeah, definitely went from, I think, 0, 2, and 3 all the way up to 3, 2, and 7 now. Has done a great job of staying safe during these engages, letting his front line go in, and then when he finds the right moment, pull the trigger on the ultimate.
Right, and the fact of the matter is he has a 6-0 in 4 Kha'Zix and a 6-0 in 6 Galio. So no matter what he's done in this game so far, it's going to look really, really good for him. Big Gods Jackals, though, things are not looking really good for them. They're hard-pressed against their own base. They've lost 2 inhibitors. It's going to be Baron up in 10 seconds that eUnited can basically take whenever they want because Big Gods are so stuck in their base. They can't really even defend. They can't even really go for a contest maybe.
Yeah, and it's really scary because at this point, you know, what are you targeting out of eUnited's drafts? They're taking so much different stuff that a lot of it not even standard champions, so you have to think about, you know, what do we want to focus down next game? I mean, maybe the Galio was a big problem this time around. It did have a lot of influence on the side lanes. It's an extremely strong champion, so maybe you take that one out. But what are you going to do about the Alistar, a champion that you thought you could bully? You were successfully bullying early on before it kind of got flipped around. It's really, really tough for Big Gods Jackals here.
And what bans do you replace at that point? They had to replace one of the bans with the LeBlanc, which GBM just ran over them with in game number 1. They've been banning away Vladimir because they're afraid of GBM playing that champion. They banned away the Caitlyn when they were on blue sides that definitely didn't have a comfort pick that they could snowball their bottom side of the map advantage with. So what do you replace? You have to give GBM something else, and he's been a factor on 2 champions he didn't even know he played.
Well, on the flip side, they're going to be back on blue sides, or red sides, excuse me, most likely, so they will be forced into that Zac ban, and probably that Cho'Gath ban that this time eUnited picked up. So, like we said, really, really tough spot for Big Gods Jackals here. Don't want to completely count them out of this game, but at a, you know, 13,000, 14,000 gold lead, 2 inhibitors down, Baron on eUnited, this game more than likely over.
Yeah, it's very difficult for Big Gods Jackals to try to come back into listen. Oh, they are the team that will be fishing for fights no matter what. As Sir T looks to be trying to go in on Deftly and Dandy, but he's got to cut off on the rest of his team. He's still going to be taken down by the Make It Rain. The E coming out from Deftly is now the rest of eUnited charging into the base of Big Gods Jackals. They force a flash away from RF Legendary, who's still a teeny tiny little Gnar. Zazel in the front line trying to just zone away Peek and Woof as he's on his own summoner platform. eUnited don't even need multiple kills to close this one out. All they got to do is take down the Nexus for the second game victory.
Yep, going to ignore that last inhibitor on the bot side. Going for a couple more kills right now instead of finishing it. But there they go. Grab game 2 in an equally dominating fashion. Maybe a little bit slower out the gate, but by 20 minutes, once again, complete control of this game and able to take very quick Barons, able to snowball those Barons into more and more objectives. And next thing you know, game's over.
Yeah, it took a little bit longer, so there's a bit of a lull. So it kind of felt like, oh, maybe Big Gods Jackals is kind of, they picked the proper lanes to win this time around. They've been able to put pressure on the bottom side of the map, and they've been able to, you mentioned just before, kind of punish the Alistar pick throughout the lane phase of the game, but they weren't able to really kind of grab any sort of advantages. They just let eUnited kind of sit back, and all the kills and the gold counts are relatively even. eUnited was just buying time for item power spikes.
And that's the thing. You look at it looked like they had a really good game plan to deal with the Alistar pick this time and have their whole early game kind of set up around that. They just seem to mis-execute on a little bit, on top of the fact that eUnited read that one coming. So that level 1 push that they went a little bit too far, it allowed the side of eUnited to be underneath their turret, so you don't need to be worried about that Rek'Sai coming over the back wall at level 3, on top of the fact that GBM was able to get that smite steal away, deny the level 3 from Sir T early on. He has to call his bot lane to help secure the blue buff, and then you're kind of into this split jungling pattern where you have a ton of time with Dandy up on the top side, and it just really threw their early game for a loop. And even though they continued to pressure around the bot lane, they got all the summoners out, and they got a small CS lead, by the time level 6s came around, already GBM was roaming and influencing the side lanes.
Right, and you mentioned GBM being a big influence onto the side lanes this game. Game number 1, it was Dandy who had the highlight reel. This time around, it's GBM picking up the Galio, heroically entering in style all over Summoner's Rift.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of missed targeting here as they ignore Fabi, who's able to go in there and pick up the cleanup kill, making this a 1-for-1 trade. But once again, you are neutralizing these aggressive plays out of Big Gods Jackals. This time up on the top side, FLICKR getting low as the TP came in from RF Legendary. He turns that one. He instantly teleports back mid. They find another pickoff into this mid lane, and he doesn't let up at any point, making sure that he keeps saving members, always keeping them alive at almost 0 health. That time, Dandy barely able to get out alive.
And showing us why he built the proto belt there by being able to pick the kill on the Peek and Woof as he dives through that tower. But eUnited, once again, you mentioned just towards the end of that game, like they've been now dominating Big Gods Jackals from the end of last week, where they were able to come back from a deficit and kind of close out that game despite GBM kind of not being as big of a factor on Talia. Now this time around, they've utilized what they have. Like they have had so far maybe 8 different champions throughout 2 games here. I mean, this is great because eUnited now, they're kind of being multifaceted and showcasing that it is about game 1, it was Dandy. Game 2, it was GBM. Before, we've seen FLICKR. Like, every single person in this team is a carry threat.
And it's like you said, how they're doing it with all these different champions, things that were not super meta. I mean, MF is not a champion that you're going to look at and say, we should ban that. Alistar, probably not the same way. I mean, like I said, the Thresh Callista, great idea behind it, but they couldn't quite execute on it. The Galio, probably a mistake letting that one through, given that you know that you can play Kha'Zix into Rek'Sai, not a terrible matchup. Maybe some small drafting errors, but as you head back into red side, it's a lot harder to draft around that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and some of the unfamiliarity around the champions kind of spilled over into what Big Gods Jackals is trying to do in their own game plan. They didn't necessarily know how quickly the eUnited team was going to be able to bait and take a Baron buff. They got the teleport out of Licorice's Poppy, and they thought that they're going to be safe, about 25 minutes into the game. But eUnited just start that Baron up again, and they're the one that's taking a fight.
Well, it's a good thing that they had managed to get such a lead already off all those side lane plays by GBM, because this was not a super clean Baron. I mean, it's a really nice Poppy ultimate to knock out the Rek'Sai to make sure this is a free Baron smite, but this could have been a disaster if the game was even, just because they're pinned up in the pit and they're getting collapsed on. Instead, they're super far ahead. Their tanks are able to walk forward. They take out the Syndra. They take out the Gnar, who teleports in as a mini Gnar. And then, like we said, super, super tanky. They continue chasing through. Here's another great Galio ultimate, keeping Licorice alive as it allows Dandy to kind of leapfrog through this fight, pick up the last couple kills. And yeah, like you said, they're so strong in game. They're so tanky. Even I was like, I don't know how this comp's going to work exactly. exactly. And it surprised me that once you get that kind of lead, there's just nothing the other team can do.
And the Big Gods Jackals have now struggled through 2 different games where eUnited hasn't even really played anything that they were extremely comfortable on. I mean, they have Deathly's Ash in the first game, and Danny on Kha'Zix is not an unfamiliar sight on the Summoner's Rift, but they played a bunch of things we haven't seen them play consistently throughout the Challenger Series. More importantly, their gambit of putting RF Legendary on the top side of the map instead of playing Chris hasn't paid off for him. They tried to give him advantages in both matchups in the lane phase, and he wasn't able to convert.
Yeah, that's definitely a big problem, the fact that the top side is not able to convert on bigger leads. He got Licorice low a number of times, but like we said, Jungler was on the bot side the entire time, not able to call him up there to actually snowball that advantage. And 7-14, Tom, you don't know what people are playing anymore. You're saying these are not eUnited's standard champions. Well, maybe they will be throughout the playoffs. You know, the other team is going to have to look at this series very, very closely, and the winner of tomorrow is going to have to figure out exactly what out of all these champions is the actual problem.
All right, well, we've still got at least one more game to go in this best-of-5 series. We're going to be stepping away for a little bit, but stay tuned for more of this series between eUnited and Big Gods Jackals. You're watching the Challenger Summer Split Playoffs. Bayano has to flash away. Fabi, though, trying to leap through, will wind up getting first blood. He's going to wind up going down shortly after that one to GBM. He's waiting to try to get into a safe spot. Rek'Sai, however, is going to utilize that ultimate to wind up picking up a kill onto MF. The Poppy Copter is going to go off, winds up knocking back a peek and move, but not before he gets a parting shot kill from that ultimate onto Licorice. Syndra might be able to try to steal it, but Kha'Zix is going to be able to spike that one away easy. Now they turn on to RF Legend, who teleports in, but he's mini-Gnar. He's taking up all the spears, but they still have the Galio ultimate, so the dive is coming in for eUnited. 5 members strong are going through the tower. They pick up 4, they pick up a Baron, and they're going for more. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the NACS Summer Split Playoffs. We're about to head into game number 3 and potentially the deciding game of this series between eUnited and Big Gods Jackals after eUnited took another very quick game in game 2.
Yeah, if you were a betting man, if this was going to be the deciding game, I think you would want to double down on this bet because so far they have been destroying. The one maybe saving grace right now for Big Gods Jackals is Chris is subbing in for game 3. RF Legendary, he got targeted very, very heavily in game 1, dove multiple times by Dandy and FLICKR. Second game, he had the 1v1, which was going fine. He had a little bit of a pressure advantage, but didn't generate a significant CS lead. And then once GBM started spilling over all over the map, he also started losing that lane as well. So maybe they're bringing in Chris. Maybe they go for like a tankier look. Perhaps they go for an even more aggressive look. Who knows exactly what they're planning?
Yeah, Chris in the top lane had been something they had swapped out RF Legendary for coming into the summer split, but Big Gods Jackals find themselves now in the same situation they did last year when they didn't have Chris, which is, 2 games down against eUnited in the semifinals with their NACS playoff lives on the line here. This is kind of do or die, and if you are Big Gods Jackals, this last ban pick phase is going to be very difficult because we were mentioning just before the break, there's been so many fastest that United's pick and ban phase of the first 2 games. You kind of are at a loss with the ban, and now you have to ban away Zach.
I think you definitely got to target some of the biggest problems from the first 2 games combined. You get the Zach, Galio, Cho'Gath bans in, most likely. It looks like eUnited's actually going to take care of the Galio ban themselves. A little surprising to see that the Kazakhs kind of probably slotting in response to that Galio ban. I have to think that might have been a little bit of a mistake out of eUnited just because I don't know what else they're thinking they're going to prioritize. Are they suddenly going to grab Caitlyn? I'm not sure what else is first pick worthy other than like an Elise or something like that.
Well, it's not going to be the Caitlyn. They banned that one away here, so it's not that, but they do ban away Pikamu's Corki, so they continue to kind of double down on this fact that Pikamu will be the person that can eventually get them a lead or something, as well as banning away something that Fabi. Well, I guess he didn't really dominate the lane phase in game number 1, but they felt very comfortable on picking that one for. Like you mentioned, the Cho'Gath is still available. The Elise will be banned away, so Big Gods showing that they fear that. And we'll see if United go for the Cho'Gath pick like they did in game number 1, and they do.
Yep, so they set up a situation where they didn't want to end up in a jungle disadvantage, I guess, because Rek'Sai does all right into Elise, but still kind of favored for the Elise matchup after the Kazakhs have been banned out. Take away a couple of the other priority picks, just making it so that there's more OP bans. So if one goes through, you guaranteed to get it. This time around, it's the Cho'Gath. I kind of understand that if you're looking at it because Dandy has had a huge influence over these games. FLICKR, while he's done great, hasn't been dominating on his own. It's off the back of teammates' help. So I can sort of understand being more scared of Dandy at this point than FLICKR. So I got to say that Cho'Gath pick looked absolutely disgusting in game 1 once it got a little lead.
Well, now you have Chris in for RF Legendary, so if you were afraid of that top side of the map, you bring in a different look of top laner. You have the potential to put him into a matchup that he may be able to turn around that RF Legendary wasn't necessarily as knowledgeable or capable of winning that lane matchup in. You could go for a Jace pickup, although they are going to prioritize the Rek'Sai again for Surti, and the Kalista again for the side of Fabi.
I like that overall. The bot lane looks pretty good. If they do go that Alistar early on, you can grab the Thresh in response here. If you move down to the second round of ban phase without them grabbing the Alistar, maybe it's worth throwing it in there just because even if, I personally don't think it's a super strong pick. You haven't been able to beat it up in lane. It's been a monster in the late game, so I can understand just wanting to get them off something that's working for them.
Well, they are going to look like they prioritize the Gragas for the side of eUnited this time around, so this is the first time we'll see Danny on something different, but they are going to want it going back to the Alistar pickup here for Zeyzal, so if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it here. They got a huge beefy frontline once again from the side of eUnited.
Yeah, eUnited showing that maybe this is the patch of tanks. We were talking about the rise of tank junglers, but with Cho'Gath showing up on the top side now, if Alistar comes back in the meta, we are already seeing a fair amount of Braum again, some Tom Kench. So it looks like there might be a new melee support joining them. Big Gods Jackals not going for the Thresh, instead grabbing the Braum. Obviously not a bad champion, still strong into Alistar, but can't super abuse it just with ranged auto attacks and great gank setup.
Well, it's kind of a similar look to what Big Gods did in game number 1, although this time around they're pairing with the Kalista, so instead of having a dominant lane with the Caitlyn matchup, now you have a little bit more engaged to kind of follow up with Surti if they're going to be playing that more aggressive kind of proactive style again. So previously you've been falling so far behind that your proactive play style hasn't been kicking into gear, but now, you're once again in the situation for eUnited. You have so many tanks on your front side, you need damage fest, but this time it's going to be from GBM. The LeBlanc is still left open, we'll see if it gets targeted down in this phase, and you still have Deathleaf's pickup to come in, but Big Gods Jackals have, you're saying, hey, I don't think this is ban-worthy, but they banned away Misfortune this game.
They banned away the Misfortune. Gonna have to see what United wants to grab. The Ashe into Kalista has always been a fine matchup. They could do that again if they really choose to. They played it into the Caitlyn previously, so Big Gods will probably want to throw another AD carry ban. This time it's Jhin, and what's scary is now the LeBlanc's up. You see eUnited kind of setting up the LeBlanc pick with that Kassadin ban. That's really what they're looking to do. That's one of LeBlanc's worst matchups. Now you take away that, they ban out the Gnar. So it looks like if Big Gods Jackals are not willing to play LeBlanc here, they're going to be getting another serving of what they got in Game 1.
No, so see if Pika Move is going to play that one, if he's going to stick to the Trident 2 of the Syndra pickup. The LeBlanc is being hovered by Big Gods Jackals. Makes me think they're going to have to take this one away. But I mean, Vladimir is open, which is something they've banned away for a while. It doesn't do the worst into the LeBlanc matchup. Early on, the LeBlanc can bully it around, but we'll see what the response is here.
Yeah, the LeBlanc matchup with Vladimir isn't the end of the world, but it is something I think generally you would want to avoid. You are down a fair amount of pressure, even if you sometimes survive in laning phase. They can always go with the Cassiopeia, has not been banned out. GBM, you know, like we talk about how he likes to play a lot of standard mages and become a teamfight monster. Haven't seen a lot of that this series, but I'm sure he is more than capable about busting that out. Actually going to be the Morgana pick.
Ooh.
So we're going to see a Morgana mid lane against this LeBlanc. An old school kind of counter pick to LeBlanc, something that we saw way back. Go back to MSI 2014.
Yeah.
It wasn't called MSI back then, I believe.
No, it was the first MSI.
It was the first MSI in Tallahassee,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's scenic Tallahassee
Park.
Park.
Oh boy, yeah.
One of the most exotic locations we've been at LOL Esports. But this is going to be a Morgana pickup here. I thought they might be setting up for the Lissandra. That was something that GBM played week 1, and we brought it up in the last game. Although they do want to go into the Tristana on the bottom lane too, so now you have a later game hyper carry. You have a Morgana who deals a decent amount of damage in the early to mid game, a lot more of like kind of a wave clear bot. But if you lock somebody down with that crowd control, can definitely poke them down for a bit. But Chris now, he's going to be picking an AP threat in the top side of the map. They're going for the Rumble, so they have Rumble on LeBlanc, and the real only AD threats, or I guess technically the Rek'Sai in the jungle, then the Kalista that was not super effective against a tanky frontline last game.
Overall, I think Big Gods Jackals comp is decent. I mean, there's a lot of people who can stack MR on the side of eUnited, unfortunately, just because of how tanky their frontline is, as well as having the Morgana to kind of give that spell immunity for a little bit. But I think the bigger thing is it feels like Big God kind of got forced into playing eUnited's game plan a little bit here. The Misfortune ban, I can understand you're not comfortable with it. You don't want to give that to him again. The Jhin ban is a surprise for me, just because you're giving up that LeBlanc pick. And Peckenwolf is a fine LeBlanc player. I've seen him play it before. He can do fine on it. That's not the problem. But it's opting into this kind of situation that you know eUnited is setting up for. They banned out the Kassadin, so they're saying, telegraph, we're going to go for the LeBlanc pick. And if you take it, we have other things prepared. Like you said, the Lissandra earlier in the split, and this time around opting for a Morgana pick. So it's something that they were very aware of the situation they were setting themselves up for, and they had more than just Kassadin prepared as a counter pick. And that's why it's a little scary if you're Big Gods Jackals, because you're playing into a situation that they have specifically prepped for, and you might not be quite as ready for it.
Right, and this is just another facet that eUnited's draft phase. They're busting out a Morgana pickup, which is something that, well, we've seen it more recently, but it's been a support role. It hasn't been in the mid lane matchup. So going, back into the history of GBM, the fact that they could draw upon this experience and draw upon his knowledge in these specific matchups to get something that like you said, plays into their draft phase.
And we talk about playing into the draft phase. I mean, they are a super short range composition here on the side of Big Gods Jackals. Kalista, one of the shortest range AD carries, and then you have Rumble, LeBlanc, Rek'Sai, and Braum. Not really much range on that side, so a lot of people are probably going to be in range of these Morgana ultimates, so you have to be very concerned about clumping up near turrets and things like that. And GBM very aggressive on champions in teamfight situations. You can expect him to be flashing forward, grabbing Azanya's early on to make sure he can survive when he does it. But it's a kind of composition that I think will work very well for eUnited.
eUnited has a ton of AoE CC too. You have the Cho'Gath Rupture and Silent. You wind up having the Flash Body Slam and the Explosive Cast coming out from Danny in the jungle this time around. You have the Alistar with the Headbutt Pulverize combination that's already been a huge factor for eUnited's team composition. So for the side of Big Gods Jackals now, you have a different look to your composition. You do have a little bit more of a team fight kind of presence. You do have the Rumble ultimate, the Equalizer to rip through onto people, but you kind of have to get those advantages in the early game to solidify the fact that you can go toe-to-toe in a later game.
And that's the problem, is solidifying those early game advantages. Because once again, Big God Jackals do have some tools available for them to win the early game. Rek'Sai, a little bit more aggressive of a jungler early on. The Rumble having good matchups, generally speaking, into melee champions. Haven't seen into the Cho'Gath yet. Has a little bit more sustain than a lot of tanks, so it could be not as strong as we're typically used to seeing Rumble into melee tanks. And then the bot side, once again, you have the Kalista, generally favored in the matchup, though Tristana is a good good matchup again. But you have the gank set up with the Braum and Kalista. So they have the tools to make things work in the early game, but we just haven't seen them able to execute on it yet.
Right, and it hasn't been for the fact that they haven't been trying.
Oh, absolutely
Just
not.
the fact that, I mean, they've continuously been making plays even though they've been at gold deficits and such. It's just that, you know, minor little things. Like we mentioned when we were talking about the jungle pathing from Sir T in game number 2, was going for that early level 3 on the Rek'Sai. Dandy countered out, smited away that the Scuttle Crab. But the fact of the matter was that Big Gods Jackals bottom lane saw an opportunity to blow summoner spells early on and pushed up super aggressively, so they weren't able to convert these advantages they're trying to set up as a team. So even though Big Gods Jackals are making plays and playing aggressively and trying to do something, the communication, or at least what it looks like coming across in game from eUnited, is stopping them at every point.
It's going to be their last chance here. This time locking in the LeBlanc, the Rumble, one of Chris's best champions. Hopefully that's able to find them an opening, because otherwise eUnited is going to be able to sweep through this series.
History may repeat itself. This is the semifinals rematch from last time around in the Spring Challenger Series playoffs, where eUnited was able to take a 3-0 victory against Big Gods that time around. This time around, though, we'll see if it's going to be Big Gods Jackals trying to upset the #1 seed as the #4 seed. They're going to have 3 back-to-back wins in order to have to try to do that one. So eUnited, even if they do slip up a little bit here, have a bit of a cushion built up for themselves.
That they do. So we'll have to see who's the focus this time around. Dandy does not have that early game skirmishing power that he had on the Kazakhs picks the previous 2 games. So he'll have to coordinate with his team to find these openings. Grog is often considered bringing the CC. The laners need to bring the damage. But, I mean, we saw him coordinate very well the first game.
Yeah.
Even though he was on the Kazakhs, it was all set up with the rest of the team. There was not much individual play. And if he can replicate that in this game, might be able to snowball eUnited for the 3rd game in a row.
I mean, normally you mentioned Gragas brings CC, his laners bring damage. What if they bring him both? Because we saw Cho'Gath being no slouch for damage in the earlier stages. They got a dive off on RF Legendary when he was playing the Jace in that matchup at level 5 or level 6, I believe, because he feasted, but he wasn't able to get the kill on him. So level 6, Cho'Gath has a lot of damage in the Morgana in the early game. You know, you can level up the Tormented Soil, just have a lot of natural wave pushing power. But in addition to that, you know, you land a Dark Binding onto somebody. It's a lot of damage out of the Morgana pickup.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Gragas can bring the CC, but if someone else already has it, he's pretty happy about that too, because then you can have these easier body slams, may not need to blow your flash right away on it. If a binding lands, if a rupture lands, if a headbutt pulve combo lands, all that stuff just makes Gragas' life that much easier. So, of course, you can always bring your own CC, but if you don't, Gragas has some.
He's got some too, so if you're buying, he's in. This time around, though, we talked about junglers in game 1 and 2 kind of being with the creative pathing coming out from the Rek'Sai. We'll see if Sir T's able to do that again this game, or if he's gone for something more standard, as he does wind up going from the Raptor camp over to his red buff. Now making his way down towards the bottom side, maybe going for an early blue. We'll have to see. But the big one I want to see is now Peek and Move versus GBM. We've seen GBM be on the split push in the LeBlanc in game 1, be on the side lane pressure, roaming Galley, and really get the ball rolling for eUnited. This time around, he's kind of on anti-carry duties, trying to keep this Peek and Move LeBlanc at bay.
Yeah, already doing a decent job. You can see how easy the wave clear is for Morgana. He already pushed in the wave once, went down into that bot lane river and dropped a ward in the Pixel Brush to make sure that there's no early aggression coming in on the side of the Rek'Sai. And then he just goes back into lane, W's the wave, pushes all that in. And like you said, trying to keep this LeBlanc locked up. It's one of the big snowball threats here on the side of Big God Jackals, and the Morgana pick working specifically to try and stop that. They also have, you know, some playmaking in the bot side, like we were saying, but it's tough because for the most part, Alistar is a fantastic kind of zoning support. If you try and go aggressive, he kind of just plays a big front line.
And we see Dandy trying to get aggressive on Sir T in his jungle here. Does wind up having the body slam to keep him at bay, and decent trade damage here. Actually, FLICKR getting pretty low, but actually is the one to force the flash out of Chris.
Oh, lands.
One rocket lands. Does he have another one charged up? He does, but FLICKR has the health potion ticking, so he's going to survive.
Dandy showing up in the top side, probably going to try and help escort this wave in. They need to be a little bit careful, just given the fact that they know Rek'Sai is up here as well. Need to be careful about the 2v2. They're actually going to go for it.
The CC chain lands, but like you said, there's not a ton of damage coming out from my early game Cho'Gath. The flash on Burrow coming in from Sir T. First blood goes over to the side of Big Gods Jackals. A teleport in the mid lane actually being canceled out by GBM, as well as fights go down all across the map. Bayano taking a lot of damage, actually using the Ignite on Zeyzal just to kind of scare him away. But trades all over the place in this game.
Whew. I gotta say, eUnited finally, their aggression gets turned back around by big Gods Jackals. Early on, as we see, hold on, FLICKR teleports right into mid lane where they're still there.
Oh, yeah, actually dealing a lot of damage to Sir T. He's going to be able to pick up a kill, but has the flash available. We'll get away from Chris, who's overheated. Bottom side of the map now, Zazel has a ton of spears stacked up in him, but the heal from definitely Tristana keeping him alive.
Aggression all over the map, Tom. All summoners down for eUnited in the bot lane. Looks like they wanted to take that early trade win that they had just moments ago and actually turn it into a kill onto Bayano. They're not actually able to find that one. As we see this teleport again, he did not actually know Sir T was still around. Teleports onto the wave. Sir T comes back to try and instantly get another kill on Licorice. Not quite familiar with all that damage that Cho'Gath can do. Finds the kill, barely able to stay alive with that flash out there. Good job by Licorice, but had to go home again. Picks up some MR, heads back to the top side. Actually still fine in CS with all that scrapping in the early game. Anyways, like I was saying, Dandy took a skirmish against Rek'Sai early on, which is usually something you should not do as a Gragas, but because GBM on Morgana has so much of a pushing priority against LeBlanc, he knew that GBM was going to be able to back him up first, so he actually forced Sir T to tunnel over the wall, also aware of the situation. Where they messed up was that they know he's up there, and instead of just kind of going to push the wave in as a unit, having the Cho'Gath queue the wave with the Gragas probably doing enough damage to get the wave in the turret, they go for the kill. And that's where they mess up because Chris was relatively healthy, Sir T was in the area, they collapse and they get that kill back. Still only a 1-for-1, so it's not the end of the world, but some of these plays that were working out so well for eUnited in the past games, not going so hot this time.
Yeah, but Licorice being able to kind of get the saving grace kill back onto Sir T. Also double buffs now, so he's kind of zoning Chris away from this wave, so he's continuing to keep up that CS advantage, and he does have that Rumble. Usually will get over tanks in the top lane, but peek and move, able to slip away from GBM. So he's going to want to get in the distortion forward. The chains will land. The root follows here. The silence comes down from Cho'Gath. The rupture will land down onto Chris, but Peek and Move's able to connect with the chains. That's double buffs on LeBlanc.
And this is what we were saying. Peek and Wolf has a pretty good LeBlanc, able to find an opportunity to get out of lane against this Morgana. Roams up to the top side, catches Licorice heading to the river to put a ward down. They get the kill, and that double buff transfer that you were talking about was going to be pretty annoying for Chris. Not only do you get the double buffs off your laner, but now you get them onto the Morgana, who's going to be able to use this to hopefully deal with some of this pushing pressure by GBM.
And so LeBlanc now going to be able to trade pretty freely here as we see the passive going out. Just a ton of damage coming on the GBM. Spell immunity will wind up keeping Morgana safe through that black shield as the chain corruption will not stun her and lock her in place. But still, just the amount of damage that Peek and Move is able to trade back down just with the spells in addition to these auto attacks.
I mean, the huge thing about red buff that, you know, some people overlook is, like we always say, that life regen. So Morgana lands a binding, puts the W down, drops her black shield to negate some of the damage that's being traded back. But when you look at the health bars at the end of the day, GBM has to blow his potions to stay healthy. Peek and Wolf kind of just regens up naturally. And now GBM on the back foot having to play further away from Peek and Wolf.
Yeah, more importantly, Peek and Move has already been able to make an impact on the map. So, you know, the utility of this Morgana pickup to kind of keep the LeBlanc kind of stuck in lane and not let her roam around that hasn't panned out in the first 7 minutes. Not saying that it completely nullified the pick in general, but Peek and Move is getting advantages for himself and for his side lanes that he wasn't able to get in games 1 and 2.
That is the big concern. One thing worth noting is you mentioned the hyperscaling of Tristana. So Morgana isn't completely an anti-carry pick. I mean, that is her primary role in this comp. Obviously, they baited the LeBlanc pick and they had the Morgana prepared, and it does well in lane. But once you transition out of laning phase, it does have a very nice target to drop that black shield on in the Tristana, who can hopefully kind of run wild in these team fights, assuming she is going to be pretty strong. So it's a really nicely thought out composition by eUnited, the way that they baited the Morgana pick and they tie it in to the Tristana, but not the start they're hoping for sure.
It's also not the same kind of look at eUnited that we've really seen, and we mentioned the power of, you know, the 3 core members from eUnited. Licorice, definitely, and Zazel. Out of all of them, definitely, while he's kind of served his purpose going even or slightly ahead in these lane matchups in the bottom side 2v2, he hasn't necessarily been the carry for the team. Historically, it was, you know, either Fox or Gilius running away with that in the spring split. In the summer split, now we have GBM and Dandy and Licorice kind of stepping into the carry position. Now this is a composition built around Deathly, so we'll see a third style of eUnited in these 3 games.
That's the big thing. Like you said, definitely was mostly known as the utility player. He obviously has great stats to back him up, but a lot of that is, as we've seen in the first 2 games, great team coordination out of eUnited, and everyone ends up looking better in a situation like that. Here we see a big fight breaking out down the bot side, though.
Yeah, good flash engage from Surti as a teleport is coming in from Chris. The equalizer rips through the side of eUnited, and they have to try to back away. They've already locked up onto Zazel, so the Alistar will fall. The teleport being channeled in for FLICKR will wind up being canceled. Actually, it was GBM and FLICKR, both of them utilizing the teleport, so they both get canceled here as Big Gods Jackals capitalizes.
Really nice timing there. Zazel had not hit 6 yet, so he's not able to play the front line that Alistar generally wants to. Gets caught out of position, doesn't burn his flash running away. They're able to melt down the still squishy Alistar, win that fight. eUnited could not quite disengage. Dandy did not have the barrel that he needed, so it would have been hard to find it. And now with that kill, Big Gods Jackals is going to keep this push going. They're going to grab the first turret of the game.
Yeah, so they group up as a unit of 4. They take down the first tower, and now they have themselves about a 2,000 gold advantage. So Big Gods Jackals already getting things they didn't have in game number 1, including a winning fight here in the early game, and a preemptive teleport now coming in. They have Chris as their top laner.
Right, so you see a great teleport in. There's the Gragas ultimate trying to knock everyone off of Zazel. Not quite able to do it. He was on top of all those line slows, the Braum ultimate, the Rumble ultimate. FLICKR and GBM both cancel their teleports. Probably a good call overall. They would have just teleported in. Maybe the fight gets really scrappy and they pick up some kills, so it's going to be really hard to win that situation overall and end up trading the top turret out for it in the long run. Still, obviously a great play out of Big Gods Jackals now, 1,000 gold in the lead and finding some gold on the very important members. Being able to make sure this Cho'Gath's not getting out of control. The LeBlanc has gotten going. A lot of good stuff out of this team so far.
And while Big Gods may have lost out on their top tower in that trade, eventually they do get the first movement on the map to put Fabi and Biano on the top side here, so they will get a little bit of tower damage traded back by the time Deftly and Zazel make their way up to this top side. Did you mention also, importantly, Zazel still not level 6. Biano and Fabi both level 7, so experience advantages now in this duo matchup, in addition to the 11 CS advantage and the extra assist gold on their bot. You see Dandy continuing to move around the top side of his map. Now this is Big Gods Jackals. Ball's in their court. They've been the ones to make proactive plays while they were still behind in the game. Can they keep up this level of proactivity now that they have a lead, and are they going to be able to hold on to it? Because they couldn't hold on to a lead in a comeback last series.
I mean, that's the thing, is that we talked about Big Gods Jackals forcing a lot of plays in the first 2 games despite being down. Like you said, this time actually having the lead. How well can they convert on these plays? Because a lot of them were good ideas, but we didn't actually have to see the execution that well because eUnited had such a lead it didn't matter. If Big Gods Jackals can find the same plays conceptually, but actually execute on them here with the gold lead, they can actually have a pretty good chance of kind of running away with this game. I mean, LeBlanc will get to a point where they have a really hard time dealing with her in the side lane out of eUnited. I mean, Morgana in a side lane isn't the craziest thing in the world. We've seen Morgana tops and things like that, but the important thing is how her gold stacks up, and you see her behind right now.
And you mentioned the fact that GBM will eventually slot into kind of a secondary protection role for Deftly's Tristana in that matchup, but not necessarily known for a split-pushing threat. You'll wind up having LeBlanc going against the Cho'Gath. Might be okay, but then you don't want to deal with the Rumble because you only have one person that's really adept at the split-push situation. It looks like they might be trying to make that a non-factor. They're jumping on the FLICKR in this side lane matchup here. Surti does have the Prey Seeker, so FLICKR's going to flash over the wall, but Surti's going to be able to follow after with the ultimate. Chris is coming on in, and he's no longer overheated, has a rocket charged up, but FLICKR's going to be able to walk away from that.
There you see a really nice path by Surti, finding an opening onto FLICKR, who have been pushed up in that long lane. And while they do have wards in the bot side, they're relatively forward wards up in the river. And he's able to wrap around from mid lane and actually find that gank onto FLICKR. They get the flash out. This, of course, means that eUnited answers up on the top side, go for an invade for this red buff steal.
eUnited, though, they are behind in gold in this one. They can't necessarily tell that from being in the state of the game that they are right now, and will continue to try to play as aggressively as they have in the previous games here. We saw Dandy and Zazel on the top side of the map, kind of uniting to steal away that red buff because they knew that Surti was on the bottom side of the map. So they're still continuing to, you know, utilize their position around the map to try to keep themselves in this game and execute the game plan that they want to, keeping Deftly safe. He's gone back and picked up a Zeal in addition to his Berserker's Greaves and has a BF sword already. So while Fabi had advantages early on, even though they made the first movement on the top side for Big Gods Jackals, you know, they've evened up the Tristana CS deficit.
Well, here's the lane setup that you're probably expecting to see for a lot of the game now. Fabi and Biano now in the mid lane. They have Pig and Wolf splitting up in the top side and Chris down the bot lane. And this is what they're going to try and use to find some openings on the map. So this is kind of where Big Gods Jackals wants to be at this point in the game. Like you said, though, it is only a 1,500 gold advantage, so they're not out of the woods quite yet. They need to keep finding these plays, but they've done a good job. They got the flash out of FLICKR. A repeat gank will most likely find a kill. They also, both people have the double TP. Or excuse me, Peckenwolf does not have a TP. eUnited has the double TP, so that is one thing in their advantage, whereas if Peckenwolf is splitting all the time, he might not be able to join into a fight. Whereas FLICKR will have some backup coming if he gets ganked in the form of GBM.
Yeah, both of those teleports are now available after the double cancel from the bottom side of the map. As you mentioned now, eUnited sending Zeyzal into the mid lane match to try to kind of match Fabi here, and they're going to be going for an engage here. Daniel, the explosive cast will land onto Bayano as definitely leaps in from the side, but they went after the target that is going to be Fates called back in by the Callista, and even though the explosive charge goes off, does not take down Bayano, but does open up this mid lane tower.
Really nice play out of Dandy there, realizing that he's not even actually aiming for the Callista, goes for the Braum right away. Braum was in the middle of casting his ultimate, which means he can't get his spell shield up. Gragas is a horribly annoying pick to play against Braum because that spell shield, or excuse me, the wall that comes up out of the Braum is just such a blocker for your ultimate. But if you can find opportunities like that and play around when you know he's going to be dropping his ultimate to disengage, you can actually find really nice Gragas ultimate still. And there you see it, Dandy with a great timing on that ultimate, grabs them mid-turret and dragon.
Yeah, so they're able to convert on that one, but at the same time, Big Gods will be pushing with Pikachu splitting on the top side, and they got the Rift Herald here going down as Surti and Fabi are going to be doing that one for themselves. United kind of know this is happening, but it's only really Zeyzal and now FLICKR in the air. Tries to use the blast, going to get over the wall. They're trying to keep Surti from picking it up, but he will be able to grab that one. Now Zeyzal and FLICKR are in the fray, but the rest of eUnited really hasn't come to play yet. So Surti is going to pick up a kill, actually go down as Fabi picks up a kill on the FLICKR. Now definitely jumped in over the backside, hopped back out on the other side. Very low health bars all around here. GBM's able to pick up a kill on the Fabi. Zeyzal somehow still alive in this fight. Will finally go down. Chris is going to want to flash over the wall, but Tristana hops back over the other side. And at the end of the day, I think it was just a 2 for 3, actually going in favor of eUnited.
That was such a scrappy situation there. FLICKR getting a little bit further ahead of his team. I'm sure we'll get another look at that one, but he goes down early into the fight. And he blast cones over. I don't think he knew what he was getting involved in necessarily. It actually does look like they had a ward. Might have seen that one. And there, Zeyzal and FLICKR doing a great job frontlining, buying time for the rest of the team to get involved. That Rumble Equalizer not actually being able to hit that many people definitely goes over the wall into Fabi. Realizes he's getting pretty low with the Callista stacks getting back onto him, so he gets out of the fight. GBM comes in, hits a really nice binding for cleanup. His ultimate was not quite off cooldown, so this would have been the perfect Morgana ultimate if he could have found it, but not quite able to do so. Still finds the correct binding, and then as Peckenwolf was over the wall trying to get out, you do a little bit of do-si-do, definitely jumps over to get the final damage, and then hops out as well.
Well, no Soul Shackle available for GBM in that fight, but United still want it coming out ahead, so now the gold count has kind of been evened up. GBM, though, going to get jumped on here in the mid lane. Surti and Bayano just charging through and leap onto the LeBlanc. Teleport from FLICKR is going to be canceled, so Zeyzal going to have to flash away over the wall, but the Rek'Sai ultimate's going to follow the chain. Does not land from LeBlanc, though, so it looks like Zeyzal will get out alive.
Good play out of Big Gods Jackals, not relaxing after a skirmish around the Rift Herald goes badly. They find GBM pushing up a little bit too far. They go onto him, but at the same time, eUnited keeps it up on the top side.
Yeah, Dandy's going to get a good body slam over the wall into a cask and donates the kill over to his AD carry indefinitely, but the Rift Herald has been summoned in the mid lane, and Zeyzal got out with his life, but now he's going to try to defend this one pretty much all by himself. Does have FLICKR coming around the backside. He is going to want to jump it down onto Bayano and Surti. They're trying to keep this tower alive. The teleport's coming in from GBM from base as well. Rift Herald still about half HP, though. He's a little distracted with some minions, but will eventually... No, turns around, swipes on the FLICKR. eUnited keep the tower alive.
Not bad. I'd say overall it's definitely worth a teleport to keep a turret alive, especially at this point in the game on your mid laner. Got a little bit dicey there. Zeyzal got very low, almost focused down. But now that top people getting caught out.
Definitely jumps into the fray and immediately has to try to flash away. Now Pikachu joining the fight, flashes forward. And the first kill is actually going to go on to Surti as he picked up a kill on the Danny. Now definitely going to get stunned up from the Braum passive. The Poros explode everywhere, and Surti picks himself up his 4th kill of the game.
So greedy out of eUnited there. They found the pick off on the top side, and the Fabi, Big God, of course, responds mid with that Rift Herald push. And then once they get forced out, you said, you know, how they teleported in, the people in the top side don't respect that fact. They're actually camping, looking for a fight, and they just get collapsed on so easily by the side of Big Gods Jackals. Dandy goes down right away, loses his flash, definitely gets a nice buster shot to knock back the LeBlanc chain to stop it from proccing, but there's still so many people chasing him down. He ends up dropping as well, and just a huge, huge overextension on the top side by eUnited there. Not happy with just the kill and protecting their mid turret.
Yeah, United maybe getting just a little bit too excited for kills at this point in time. The gold lead does swing back in favor of Big Gods Jackals. Now the side of Big maybe getting a little too greedy for that mid lane tower as a binding will go a little bit wide to the right, and they're not able to capitalize on a kill on either Peek and Move or Chris.
Both teams getting a little too scrappy right now. Just some itemization things to point out this time around. FLICKR actually going for the Abyssal Mask because a lot of magic on the other team as well as a lot of magic damage on his team. So a great pickup there, something we didn't see in previous games when he was the primary magic damage threat. This time with the Gragas and Morgana all getting close range with him, they'll be able to use that passive very effectively.
We already got a Leandri's Torment though on the opposite side here for Chris, so giving him a little bit of magic penetration himself. No magic lethality as a stat in the game yet, but going to be getting a little bit of extra HP percentage burn to help rip through targets like Zeyzal, like FLICKR, and like Dandy, who are going to be quite tanky. We also wind up having Gunblade on LeBlanc, in addition to a very tanky Rek'Sai going for the Spirit Visage as well as a Aegis of the Legion going into a Locket now.
That's one of the things I was about to point out. One a small saving grace for eUnited is how many of those kills ended up on Sir T, who is going this full tank Rek'Sai. So while that does make him a very annoying frontline threat, then in the sense that eUnited has to deal a lot of damage to get through him, at least it's not a LeBlanc who's unanswerable in the split push. That would be so much worse to have 4 kills on LeBlanc. Instead, she's the one sitting on 4 assists.
Well, she does still have a Gunblade to her name. So
oh, she's plenty strong.
She's plenty strong, but as you mentioned, the teleport disadvantage by not taking that Summoner spell for Peek and Move may be a factor as this game goes a little bit later on. As FLICKR has this available, GBM still on cooldown for about 1.5 minutes.
And one thing I'd say is that even though eUnited has been on the back foot for the large majority of this game, their vision control has been decent this entire time. You see in the top side how many wards they have in the river and in the side lane rush around mid. Bot side has been largely controlled by Big Gods Jackals, given that Dragon spawning, and that's where they're focusing. But at least eUnited is staying active and trying to punish things like this push. Great job by Zeyzal in the top side of that fight, basically 1v1ing the Kalista, keeping her out and off the frontline members of eUnited, who are now going to try and turn on the Baron after this push. This might be a little greedy. Sir T still alive, has Smite available, and Flash.
A little risky, but they might be trying to bait out a fight because they know that they have multiple members in the advantageous situation. Bayano on the backside, though, does not have the Braum ultimate available. They're focusing down on the Baron. Sir T is going to get headbutted away from Zeyzal, so there's no threat whatsoever for a steal.
And one thing that we forgot to point out with all these Cho'Gath changes is the fact that his objective control is still super strong. Before we get into that, let's take a look at this fight. You see Zeyzal opening up on the top side against Kalista, just 1v1ing, and during this time, Chris ends up TPing in, but now he's in the middle of the fight by himself because Bayano and Fabi have been pushed out by the 1v1 of Zeyzal. So this fight actually ends up being a 2-for-0 right away for eUnited. They're able to transition that into the Baron, where they're able to use that Cho'Gath ultimate to provide some extra true damage bursts onto the objective, comboing it with Dandy's Smite, making it very hard for Sir T knowing when to get in, as well as struggling to find an angle. They're able to grab the Baron. Big God Jackals find a small consolation prize with the Mountain Dragon, but now eUnited's back on the map and trying to push this objective advantage.
It might stem the bleeding a little bit as now they won't have a Mountain Dragon to back up the Baron buff on the side of eUnited to take down some of these towers that are still left on the map. They've only taken down 2, so there's still an outer tower on the bottom side that we are going to see them prioritizing early on here. They do have a Tristana now with an Infinity Edge and a Static Shift, so you're going to be starting to rip through these towers with that explosive charge. And the rest of eUnited are just kind of playing support duties. You mentioned their vision control being extremely strong in this game. Now that they have the Baron buff secured, they're transitioning it down to this bottom side to make sure they can rotate between mid and bot.
Yeah, FLICKR joins to be part of the front line attack onto this turret, just giving some room for Deftly to push in, and Morgana teleporting in under the turret.
Yeah, it looks like the Big Gods want to try to go for the fight. Equalizer already being utilized here, but now GBM's going to pick up a kill onto Bayano, who just kind of got thrown into the middle of the fray here by an explosive cast. So this Dandy Gragas pickup is working out pretty well for eUnited, and this Baron buff is has netted them now 2 towers and a kill.
And I love the way Licorice used his ultimate in that fight. He had Surtees sitting right in front of him, so he doesn't get greedy as we see. Hold on, Peckwolf getting jumped on. Flash forward by Zeyzal.
That eUnited might just be trying to win the game right here now with this Baron, but they're forcing Big Gods Jackals back into their own base. They zoned away for an inhibitor tower, and it's just been like domino effect. Every single tower on the bottom side has fallen. The inhibitor now being focused down, and they just can't break the tanky front line. If eUnited, Surtees going to want to use his ultimate to dodge out on some of the damage, but Zeyzal's able to pick up a kill. Now they do wind up having Bayano respawning, so eUnited have to back away, but that was just a series of catastrophic events for Big Gods.
I mean, these guys know how to end a game. You give them any advantage, they'll take your arm off. There they grab a bunch of kills and an inhibitor down the bot side in a 5v5 situation that they just force underneath the bot inner turret, excuse me.
You see a CC chain landing down onto Chris over the wall as eUnited may have been forced back from the bottom side, but I guess they're not done yet. They're just going to rotate up. They have an Ocean Drake on their side, so a little bit of regeneration between the two lanes. That's enough for them to brute force down another tower. They've gotten 4 towers off of this Baron buff and an inhibitor. That might make it 5.
Yeah, they're not done yet. No reason that they really need to back off here. They're so tanky in the front line. Big Gods Jackals throwing all their ultimates out, just trying to deter them from this push.
Yeah, but they're not quite done yet. The tower will barely stay alive. Zeyzal goes back in, gets a huge, massive headbutt pulverize combo. Definitely is able to pick up the first kill now. Leaping into the backlines as the tower falls. This Tristana is on fire, trying to take down very low members of Big Gods Jackals, but instead they're just going to focus down on the inhibitor.
Was literally on fire, had an ignite thrown on her, but she's able to stay alive just fine. Did not receive any attention during that fight. That's why we talk about how strong this front line is for eUnited. Dandy is so far in front of the team that Big Gods Jackals kind of have to hit him, and then he just turns around with a big body slam after they dropped all their ultimates down to deter that push. And that whole time, definitely just hitting away on the front line, able to grab the 1 kill. Almost had a reset opportunity if he could get onto Surtees, could not quite find that angle. Instead, playing the objective game, they grabbed the inhibitor.
Yeah, and now eUnited all of a sudden find themselves surging out to a 6,000 gold advantage. So that Baron power play was absolutely massive. It net them 2 inhibitors, it net them 5 towers, it net them a multitude of kills. That's already at least 4,000 gold just in objectives, not even counting the Baron itself.
Huge swing out of eUnited, just never letting up as soon as they get an advantage. Here you see that mid lane fight. eUnited posturing very aggressively around the turret. Big Gods Jackals feel desperate to do something about it. Dandy goes in onto Fabi, just kind of throwing that ultimate. Everyone starts focusing him down. Then you see the turn re-engage, and this front line goes in so aggressively. Even GBM getting involved with his ultimate. Definitely is just, like we said, unfocused this whole time, hitting away. He jumps over the wall to kind of get onto Bayano a little bit, but he didn't tunnel on Surtees. Some people get that bloodlust. They see all the resets available. You know, Fab definitely not falling prey to that one. Instead, being a good AD carry, hitting those turrets.
I feel like you're trying to tell me something, Mark. I would tunnel in on that. I'd go for the reset.
I mean, I would too. That's why I'm saying this is impressive. That looked like a kill to me if he wanted to go completely crazy for it, but he holds on to his flash, doesn't want to lose that one. They're playing to win the series, not to make cool plays.
Well, that's the thing too. You mentioned the fact that eUnited, now we have a different look at them. This is kind of like a composition built around definitely in the later stages of the game. So he knows that he's, you know, one of the more priority targets if you're the side of Big Gods Jackals to wind up trying to take down. At this point in time, he's gotten the full Energizer build online on Tristana. He has a Vampiric Scepter to help keep himself alive. So as long as he's able to just sit in the back line and rain down pain, even if he's only picking up assists, he's doing his job well enough. Now 10 kills to 8. Looks like eUnited are going to be focusing on the last remaining inhibitor from the side of Big Gods Jackals. GBM has already deleted Surtees, so as many kills as this Rek'Sai has gotten, he's unable to stay alive against this Morgana pickup who's gone for the Leandri's Torment, Zanya's Hourglass, has a Morello Namacon. Just everybody from the side of Big Gods Jackals seems as soon as that Baron buff had gone down in favor of eUnited, they just scatter all sorts of places. Looks like they can't even really cohesively keep their team together as eUnited will just dive through on the Nexus towers. This might be one of the fastest best of 5s we've seen in the Challenger Series. This game under 28 minutes. They're taking down Nexus towers. They might be going for the Nexus. They're going to be moving on to the final.
And eUnited complete the sweep 3-0 in 3 very dominant games. This one a little bit slower starting. Big Gods Jackals found some opportunities, but once eUnited got that Baron buff, they ended this game.
eUnited just basically coming out of nowhere with that victory. We thought Big Gods Jackals had finally, you know, found themselves a formula to stem the early game tide from eUnited, to keep them at bay, and they got themselves a gold lead. But all of a sudden, just one Baron, one push, Big Gods Jackals crumbled apart.
I mean, that's the thing, and the mark of a truly great team is we saw them sometimes overextending, but they're hungry. They're always looking for where their next advantage is. And against a team like Big Gods Jackals, who they're able to outperform in a lot of these situations, that they actually are able to just end the game as soon as things start rolling in their favor. It's that kind of snowball downhill effect. You get the first play, you get the second play, and next thing you know, the game's over.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact of the matter is we saw Zeyzal really stepping up this game. I mean, it's kind of like an interesting thing. On eUnited side, you saw a different player on their team kind of, taking control of the game and making, being the big deciding factor. Game 1 was Dandy, Game 2 was GBM. Game 3 here, we saw Zeyzal in that mid lane fight was basically the big reason why that Big Gods Jackals fell apart. The fight goes in favor of eUnited. It was I believe a 2-for-3 or a 2-for-0, I'm sorry, in that fight, because he zoned away the Callista, and they were able to transition that one into a Baron that they took.
I mean, yeah, that fight in particular, we sung Zeyzal's praises a fair amount during the previous series that we had on the last week of the regular season, and his Morgana play was phenomenal, which is great now that they're picking the Morgana. It might end up being a flex pick later on, who knows, but this time on the Alistar, showing that he is super strong, and that's really what really set them up for this victory, was that team fight in the mid lane.
Yeah, and that turns into a Baron buff, that Big Gods Jackals, like we said, that as soon as that one goes down, they really didn't know how to respond to that one. And we see here, they were trying to push on that mid lane tower. They got so low earlier on. And this is the play we're talking about with Zeyzal on the backside. He completely zones away Fabi, completely zones away Biano, and just lets the rest of eUnited wreak havoc.
Yeah, there you see. I think, Chris thought he was going to be teleporting into his team and ends up kind of alone in the middle of the rest of eUnited. They focus him down after they already took down, I think it was Pick and Wolf in the mid lane. So just an overall great team fight out of them. Really nice target selection. And then a good call to go for the Baron. I thought it was being a little over aggressive, getting the Rek'Sai was up with Flash and Smite, but they have the Cho'Gath ultimate to help kind of make sure they have that true damage burst. It's going to be really hard to actually get a Smite steal. Really smart heads-up play out of eUnited, showing that they're practiced with that Cho'Gath pick, even though you and I might still be a little unfamiliar with everything it's going to do in the game.
Yeah, that's true. The fact of the matter is, once they solidified that objective control, once they got that push going on, they didn't relent on the pressure. Even though Big Gods Jackals looked like they're not going to push into our inhibitor tower. They won't dive us through this, even though we've lost one member and used our equalizer. They just kept going. And then even after that, they got forced away from the inhibitor when the respawns came in for Big Gods Jackals, just rotated into the mid lane and just took that tower and that inhibitor.
And that's what we were saying. And another example, I didn't quite get to touch on the game, but I love the way FLICKR just uses ultimate to chunk out a frontline member. He just bit Sir T for 1,000 damage, forces him out of the front line, makes it easier for the Tristana to snowball through. Understanding, in certain compositions, how you can use that Cho'Gath ultimate. It doesn't always need to be an execute on a backline member. It really comes down to how it fits within the rest of the team. And he just showed great mastery over a champion that, has only been relevant for one patch so far.
That's very true. And you do mention the fact that this is a team effort. So we had lots of great performances from eUnited today. But we really want to recognize one player who stood out above the rest to earn our player of the series vote. And that person today was GBM.
Yeah, he had a monster performance. Game 1, his LeBlanc pick was, snowballed through Dandy's early aggressive playmaking, but with that pick was able to start running wild. Game 2, he was the guy who got the team going. Big Gods Jackals were trying to force plays in the side lanes, and he was always there to shut them down. And then Game 3, he was kind of the pivotal pick of the draft. They set up the LeBlanc pick for themselves. Big Gods Jackals react to it, take the LeBlanc pick away. They have that Morgana counter pick prepared, and he's kind of fitting into the comp as well because they have a Tristana late game hyper carry that they can then throw black shields on. Overall, great champion pool out of GBM for this series, and really helped set the team up for victory both in-game and out of game.
Yeah, 3 different picks, 3 different looks to GBM, so kind of breaking the mold that we expected to see from him. But, just coming out very, very impressive stuff. And although GBM was our player of the series, I got to welcome somebody else to the desk here. He was pretty hungry for this victory himself. FLICKR, congratulations on the 3-0 sweep.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you guys just kind of came into this one. You had a whole slew of different picks and everything with the new patch and everything. You guys were coming up against Big Gods Jackals for what seems like, the millionth time in the Challenger Series. How was your mindset kind of coming into this 1 versus 4 matchup?
I mean, we kind of all expected that we would be able to win, but you don't really want to go in with that mindset. So we just went in, we're going to play our own game, and we knew that we would come out with a victory if we all played well.
So we have to talk about the Cho'Gath pick. Obviously, new patch. Everyone knew it was pretty strong, getting a lot of focus in solo queue. First time I'm seeing competitive play. So tell me a little bit about what you like about it, why you guys picked it twice in this series.
I think it's really good. A big part of it is that you can't actually really counterpick it because you can flex it into 3 different lanes, or jungle and mid lane, I should say. And then also it just has a really strong lane phase, and it's just a strong front line throughout the game.
So the big change of it was, of course, the E. Do you feel like that's where all the new power comes from? Because he had a change a little while ago with the ultimate being able to stack up on champions and those kinds of things. Was this just like a little buff that put him over the edge, or would he have been fine before, and this is let's finally giving him attention now?
I think that, like, even without the E change, I think that Cho'Gath was going to come back. It's actually a champion I was looking at before the E change, but then they changed the E, and I was like, wow, this is going to be really strong. We should practice this for sure. So
worked out pretty well for you overall. Speaking about the rest of your team, it did feel a lot like a team game, especially game 1 and game 2, even game 3 to an extent, where game 1, Danny got all you guys snowballing, and then game 2, GBM was all over the map with the Galio teleports. And being that they're 2 Korean players, what's the communication like with them? Because it seemed very, very impressive, the level of coordination between the 3 NA ex-rookies now from last split and them synergizing well.
It's actually really good. We don't really have any problems with communicating with them. It's like, so if we want to make a play top, I'll say like we should make a play top, and then they'll respond in English. But if they're just doing like a mid jungle 2v2 whatever, they'll just talk in Korean, and we'll just kind of like nod and play, So
familiar with that.
Yeah, well, definitely had mentioned the interview last week that you guys, the Koreans had a couple of visa issues. You came into this one, or visa work to do, not issues, sorry. You came into this one, you guys seem to kind of be all on the same page. So you're making your way to now your second Challenger Finals, and you have either Tempo Storm or Goldcorn United on the opposite side. So I got to ask you now, who do you think you're going to face in the finals?
I think it's probably going to be Goldcorn United, but I think it's going to be a really close series. So I think it's going to be 3-2 either way.
So we're in for 5 games, which means you guys want to tune in for a lot of games tomorrow.
He just wants as much information as he can get. That's what it is.
You can't really blame him for that.
No, not at all.
That's really
he's like,
idea.
I want to watch the games. Yeah, sure.
Well, you guys threw out a lot of interesting picks, too, so you kind of want to see what's going to unfold on the 7-14 patch. So I do have to say congratulations on the 3-0 victory, and we will see you next week in the finals.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And with our series complete, let's take a look at the updated bracket. Like I just said, 2 Licorice on the desk. eUnited has punched their ticket to next week's final in the Battle Arena, and their opponent, however, has yet to be decided. Don't worry, though. We won't have long to wait to receive an answer to that question, because our remaining squads of GCU and Tempo Storm will face off in our second semifinal tomorrow night.
Definitely going to be a closer matchup than tonight. I think even before we actually saw how this series ended up resolving, it was just something that we had seen over the course of the regular season, where for a little while it looked like Tempo Storm was the de facto #2 team, and then GCU kind of did their patented GCU thing at this point, where they ramp up over the course of the season, and by the end they're beating eUnited, still the #1 seed, and like you said, had a little bit of troubles with the visa, potentially not being able to practice as much. But at the end of the day, GCU does seem to be ramping up and potentially ending up once again as the #1 team in Challenger.
Yeah, well, this is another rematch of our semifinals from the spring slate. This has kind of been a repeat bracket, but all these teams have really been stepping up this time around. You heard from Licorice already. It's going to be a pretty close series. Doesn't know exactly how many games it's going to be. He still feels it'll be an all-United finals. Maybe he's just hungry for revenge from last year.
I'm sure that's a little bit of it, given that they got beaten down by GCU, and then they had a rough time during the promotion tournament. So I'm sure eUnited just wants to get back on the stage and kind of prove themselves.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. That matchup is coming up tomorrow, and that's going to do it for us here tonight. So on behalf of myself, Mark, and of course, the entire Challenger broadcast crew, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. The CC chain lands, but like you said, there's not a ton of damage coming out from my early game Cho'Gath. The flash on Burrow coming in from Sir T.
Teleports right into mid lane where they're still there.
Oh, yeah, actually dealing a lot of damage to Sir T. He's going to be able to pick up a kill. Equalizer ripped through the side of eUnited, and they have to try to back away. They've already locked up on Azazel. The rest of eUnited really hasn't come to play yet, so Sir T is going to pick up a kill, actually go down as Fabi picks up a kill on the Licorice. Very low health bars all around here. GBM's able to pick up a kill on the Fabi. Zazel somehow still alive in this fight. Will finally go down. Chris is going to want to flash under the wall, but Tristana hops back over the other side. eUnited will just dive through on the Nexus towers. This might be one of the fastest best of 5s we've seen in the Challenger series.